I heard Cardinals, Dodgers, Cubs, Reds, Texas a little bit. I think like some New York teams in there. I really didn't like think too much about it until my agent told me like what he was hearing and like what my GM was hearing and stuff. I think it was a long list of teams, but I don't know how serious any of them were. Like I know there was a few that stepped up and they were like going back and forth, but I know the Dodgers were the most aggressive.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That voice you just heard was Tyler Glasnow, who apparently heard about the Cardinals having interest in him this offseason. Alex, that audio courtesy of Foul Territory. You know how much I wanted Tyler Glasnow. After listening to him on that show yesterday, it became increasingly clear, Tyler Glasnow essentially demanded a trade to the Dodgers. He told the team, the Rays, hey, there's only a certain number of teams that I would be willing to listen to in terms of a long-term extension, and by me doing an extension with them, it will allow you to get more via the trade because I become a more valuable commodity. Makes sense. $25 million on one deal, or on a one-year deal, or a multi-year contract. Which one would you rather have? For the Dodgers, it was the multi-year contract. So they get more in return. He ends up being a Dodger. We all know how it goes from there. I did find it interesting, though, that the Cardinals were at least on the outside looking in, hey, look over here, on the Tyler Glasnow sweepstakes, which seems to suggest, hey, maybe there's a pile of money that's still available over there. And then I heard this from Jim Hayes yesterday, who was on the Newt News podcast and said the following about one Yamamoto.
I just did a StreamYard with Lars for my YouTube channel. The news on Yamamoto is so pressing for baseball fans, for Cardinal fans, and he is friends with Yamamoto. I asked him, I said, I've read where you lobby. He said, no, I lobby hard. And he said, you really have to pull back a little because he's got to do what's in his best interest, and I understand that. But by the same token, I can't think of any reason why he wouldn't want to pitch in St. Louis. And he said, but I'm on him. His mom is all over Yamamoto's mother about convincing him to pitch in St. Louis. I said, all right, just give me straight. I don't know if the Cardinals are in. I don't know what offers are on the table. I know none of that. I don't know the interest level on any teams. I said, just tell me, do the Cards really still have a shot at Yamamoto? And he said, yes.
Huh. I say no.
All right, so the Cardinals are in on the guy that is reportedly going to get $250 million to $300 million. No, they're not. They're not. They're
what are you talking about? 13-year deal for that means you're only paying him like $20 million a year.
Yeah, you really extend that thing out.
Yeah,
they're definitely not in on him. There's no chance they're going to be.
Hold on, let me do my math. $300 million divided by 15. $20 million a year.
Got it.
And
have the money. $50 million posting fee, which comes out of your pocket today.
No, you defer it.
I'm sure it'll be fine. They're not in on him. But
the cat said it.
Alex, let's set that aside for a moment. Newt actually told him. Let's set that aside for a second. There may be somebody at the top of the market that still remains available that the Cardinals are actually in on. How about this?
The haters market has not developed. I think the Rangers are definitely a team to watch. The Cardinals, I think, are a team that's in on him to some extent. Maybe the Angels. There are teams out there that will want him. The question is, does he want the record-breaking contract to get over $105 million over 5 years, or is it going to be something shorter or a little less AAV? He'll sign, but it might not be any time in the near future.
See, what you guys got to do is you got to listen to every single word that Mark Feinsand said. He said the Cardinals are in it to an extent. To that extent being, hey, Josh, will you come here for 1 year? No, Mo. Okay, thanks. That was the extent.
So that was Mark Feinsand on MLB Network 2 days ago. Alex, Mark Feinsand, and God bless him, is not JP Morosi. He is not doing the, hey, this player's from here, that team needs his position, they could connect and be a really good match in free agency.
Josh Hader played for Milwaukee. Milwaukee's in the NL Central. The Cardinals played them a lot. Josh Hader would play there.
The Brewers need a left-handed bat. Their general manager was previously underneath David Stearns. David Stearns is in New York. New York has left-handed bat X.
It's called the Big Apple.
He makes sense for the Brewers. Like, that's the kind of stuff that JP Morosi does on MLB Network because you got to keep the hot stove churning, baby.
It's always
We got to keep the news a churning. That's not what this is. This is an actual report from Mark Feinsand. Now, we can disagree or we can have a conversation on how in the Cardinals actually are on Josh Hader. I think it was an important clarification there that he said, hey, Josh Hader, we'll see if he wants to beat the all-time market leader for biggest contract ever given to a reliever.
He does.
That's probably something that would pull the Cardinals out of that conversation. But what would you guys think, theoretically speaking, about the Cardinals getting in on the Josh Hader market? It's not something we've really discussed, frankly, going into this offseason.
I love it because of the name and because of the talent and what he can provide. I don't love it to the extent of what they're going to have to pay for it. And if you're Josh Hader, you're not signing on a 1-year deal. This is going to be, Matsui just got a 4-year deal with the Padres?
For $20 million. That was all about them taking down the AAV.
But if you're Josh Hader, I think you're going to get a little certainty with your contract. And so I don't know how in I'm on Josh Hader if we're talking 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, and I think even though, the market's not there, I think you're still looking at a 4 or 5 year deal. It just may not break the record. That's why, would I have interest in Hader? Yeah, to a certain extent. 3, 4 years I'd be in, and probably 20 mil maybe. If it's 3 by 60, 4 by 80, I could kind of get behind it. The one question, though, that I have, and this is why I'm shocked that they're kind of kicking the tires, kind of quote unquote, around the Hader situation, is can you have 2 guys at the back end of the bullpen that kind of determine when they pitch? And what I mean by that is Hader basically told the Padres, hey, we're not in a playoff spot. I'm not pitching today. Excuse me, Josh, we're not technically eliminated. I don't care. I'm not feeling it today. And then Helsley, he's not as bad as Josh Hader based on what I've seen with Josh Hader in Milwaukee and in San Diego. But Helsley can't go back-to-backs very often. Now, they did that a little bit down the stretch last year when the games didn't matter. So maybe that's a sign of, you know what, he's going to be more reliable. But I don't know if you can have 2 of those guys at the back end of your bullpen, because that would be a little bit worrisome for me.
What Josh Hader is, though, is one of the most dynamic and unhittable pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. If you get that dude at the back end of your bullpen, and we heard this quote yesterday, and T-Bone, we had our differences on what it meant, but John Mozeliak told the Cardinals radio network on Sunday, hey, our goal is to shorten the length of games. And if you have Josh Hader, whether it's the 8th inning or the 9th inning, however you want to set him up with Ryan Helsley, maybe you just go matchups, right? If you got more lefty bats in the lineup in the 8th inning, you go Hader there. If you got him in the 9th inning, you go Hader there. However you want to put it, that would be arguably the best 8th and 9th inning pairing in all of Major League Baseball. And if you decide, hey, we're going to spend less on our starting rotation because we want to be awesome closing games out, and that was really the lesson that they learned in 2023, maybe, was we did not have enough dynamite, unbelievable stuff at the back end of our pen. There is nobody that brings more stuff to the back end of your pen than Josh Hader. Now, a multi-year contract for any reliever scares the ever-living hell out of me. I am not in on that typically, but if the Cardinals throw caution to the wind and they say, you know how you win in the postseason? You win with arms out of your bullpen that are throwing 95 plus. I could understand it. And if they say, hey, how do you win in the regular season? You win in the regular season by your starters getting deep into games. And we needed more of that last year, and we've added that. I could see the argument. So you add all of this together, and now you are starting to understand how, okay, you built a team that can win in the regular season, get to 90 wins. And I can see, not even having to put on my Cardinals colored glasses, but I could see how with a front 3 in your rotation, that is pretty solid, and this back end of your pen, I can understand how that wins in the postseason as well. You are suddenly starting to build your team for the regular season and for October if you add Josh Hader. I'm highly skeptical of them actually doing this, but I can't see how you talk yourself into it.
I mean, this is the other go big move in the offseason that the Cardinals can accomplish if they don't go get that other starting pitcher. I, for one, would rather them go make the other trade for the starting pitcher, but this is the other direction you go with it. And my concern is T-Bone's concern. I don't know if I need another prima donna in my bullpen this season that decides when he wants to pitch and if he's hurt. I mean, we just dealt with, 5 years of it with an outfielder, and now you're going to be paying somebody $20 million who you need as a closer and decides. But on the flip side of that, that's not my job to figure out. That's Oli Marmol's job to figure out.
And to be fair to him, some of that was warranted. The way that the Brewers used him in the first couple of years of his career, he threw 55 games and 81 innings. The next year followed up with 61 appearances in 76 innings. They were overusing him. And then the next year, guess what happened? He got hurt. during the COVID season. So, like, I don't necessarily blame him for saying, hey, you guys are overusing me, and I'm trying to make it to free agency. So some of that was justified. And frankly, one of the things that he would get here in St. Louis is a manager that wants to utilize his bullpen during the regular season the way that Hader has been talking about in the past. Ollie Marmol is not a guy that's going to push his relievers to be overused. He is somebody that does think about, okay, how do I make sure that my best relievers are available to me in October? He did this a couple of years ago with Ryan Helsley, where he says, hey, Helsley is no good to me if I can't utilize him in October. That's when we really need him to be at 100%. And then, of course, he got hurt on the final day of the regular season by jamming his thumb. But I do see how it could work here in St. Louis. Again, I am highly skeptical. I don't think they're going to go out and do something like this. But it's fun to consider the possibility, and if they went out and did it, I would praise them for it. I think it's a contract that very well may age poorly, but if you're just trying to capitalize on the final year of Paul Goldschmidt's guaranteed deal, you want to get in while the getting's good with Nolan Arenado in the prime of his career, you think you've got a real chance to win this year? Cool, go ahead and push it all in, and I would rather have Josh Hader than, like, Eduardo Rodriguez or one of these middling pitchers that were available on the free agent market. Go get Josh Hader and trade for a starter. I'm cool with all of it, but Josh Hader is a really interesting name, man. I would rather have Hader on this deal than Jordan Hicks on his. I'll say that.
I'd rather have Yamamoto.
I'd rather have neither. Well, Yamamoto, yes. Yeah, sorry, Yamamoto, yes. The Hicks and Hader conversation, out. But because I really don't want to do them both till 8 years. Now, again, if the market drops and it is like 80 mil for over 4 years, which I'm not even sure that's going to be what the deal is, then okay, I can hear the argument for it and I can kind of get behind it. But relievers, it's such a volatile market that, and Mo keeps saying that it's a volatile market, and then I hear them pop up in the Hader rumor mill, which is just insane.
Hader has been one of the very few that is not volatile, though.
But see, he has had a year where he has
just
been
one.
volatile. I know, but that's an important one.
Which one was it, though?
2 years ago.
Yeah, it was 21.
That's fine, man.
It wasn't good, but every other year of his career, he's been unbelievable. Like, the best guy that you could possibly ask for at the back end of your pen. So if they went out and did it, I'm going to talk about those and not what happened
Maybe
in
it was a Mike
2022.
Schultz problem.
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about
there.
15 minutes or so, I thought Drew Bannister had a really interesting comment after practice yesterday. We'll get into that coming up in about 15 minutes or so. It sure sounds like he is learning quickly what is wrong with this Blues team. But coming up next, we're talking to Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and Bally Sports Midwest. And this year for the holiday season, he gets to spend it, at least for a couple of days, down in sunny Florida. Joe, we appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
Joey.
What's up, fellas? Doing good. How are you guys doing today?
Doing all right. So let's talk a little bit about the Blues and what happened in that last game against Tampa Bay. I heard your comments post-game, Joe. I thought it was really compelling what you were saying about, hey, if this doesn't get turned around, maybe you see some of the guys that are just chomping at the bit to be able to get that next opportunity. Maybe you see some of that. It sounds like Sammy Blais might be put into the lineup after Hugh McGing was taken out. What'd you see from them that stood out in a negative way on Tuesday, Joe? What happened there?
I think the biggest thing that when we saw a tale of two teams over the last two, both times you fall behind in the game, and then in both times you see different results. With Dallas Stars, you fall down by 2, and I think the power play gets you a goal to get you right back into the mix. Let's flip it to the Tampa game. Was it something similar? I actually think it was. Even though they got blown out in that game 6-1, they don't win that game. I think it's a matter of a bounce. I mean, you're down 2-0 in that Tampa Bay game. What happens? You're killing a penalty, and your penalty kill does, again, what it's been doing all year. You get a scoring chance. Kevin Hayes gets a breakaway. He tries to slide it to the 5-hole of Vasilevsky. What happens if Vasilevsky makes a save? I mean, to me, this is what hockey is. This is just, it's a bounce. It's a life. It's a momentum jolt. 2 games ago in Dallas, you're down by 2. Saad gets you a goal on the power play. What happens? You get life, and all of a sudden you go off and you want to run. You win that game in overtime. The other day versus Tampa, again, down by 2, killing a penalty. You get a breakaway, multiple opportunities to get it back within 1, and the Blues don't convert. The goalie at the other end makes some big saves, and then the Blues find themselves chasing the rest of the game. So it's interesting as you look at both the games recently under Drew Bannister, both coming from behind, both in different fashions, and it really does come down to that one bounce.
Joe, Drew talked a lot yesterday following the practice about compete and how he wants to see more of it. You played a long time in the NHL, man. Compete isn't something that you can just teach players, is it?
No, I mean, this is something that's inherently got to be inside them, and this is where you have to tool a roster accordingly. And let me give you an example about, how do you discover compete through years and years of grinding, and then the recognition of recognizing when you're at where you're at to appreciate it and know that you're going to do anything to stay there. We see a lot of times with young players in the league, and it's not necessarily the Blues situation, but a lot of these anointed young players who are 18 years old, 19 years old, their first-round draft picks, whether it be a Logan Cooley or Connor Bedard, and certainly they're talented enough to be at the level. But the question mark becomes, do they lose a little bit of that competitiveness and the recognition of what it took to get to this level? Because quite frankly, guys, they don't go through it, and I'm going to flip it to the Blues side now. You look at players like Zachary Bolduc. Look at a player like, Dean. 2 young and willing players down there that are going to be a part of this future. Now, why are they still in the minors? If you're a team that's at 500, you're calling up players like Mackenzie McEachran and Hugh McGing. Clearly, Dean and Bolduc are going to be more of the Blues' future than those 2 players. So the question becomes, why are they still in the minors, and why aren't they getting NHL experience? Doug Armstrong is going to keep those players down there all year, and he's going to let them grow through the pains of it. He's going to let them grind and be on a bus and recognize how hard it is to make it at a pro level in the American Hockey League and making what they make. And I think a part of that is just the process. You have to trust the process, because if you have the process of being down there and grinding through things and understanding how hard and how difficult it can be, when they do get that opportunity, Alex, to play up in the National Hockey League, they're going to make the most of it. And there's going to be this innate just competitiveness built within them because they knew how long and how hard it was to get there, and they're not going to want anyone to strip it away from them. So that's part of development, and I think that's part of the direction the Blues going in the direction they're going.
How do you develop that within the current group, Joe? Is it possible to do so? Like, I know yesterday it sounded like Drew Bannister, maybe you can shed some more light on this, had a competition drill at the very beginning of practice. That way they have to immediately get into it as opposed to having the practice come to them the way that sometimes it feels like happens in the game. How do you develop that within this group of players? Because some of them are going to be here for the long haul.
Sure. In the meantime, BK, and the answer is it takes everybody, and it takes everyone individually at different times. This is a very long season. Can you expect Braden Shen to step over the boards and do what he did in that Chicago game every single game? Absolutely not. Can Tyler Tucker go up against a Brady Kachuk style of player and fight every single time? No. Can Jordan Binnington stand on his head the way he stood on his head a lot of this year? No. We saw last game. He's human. He's going to have games. He's going to have games where goals just slip by him. So what makes a great team is the team competitiveness, and you're going to need different individuals to step up at different times. And that's what I've seen with championship teams. It's not always a star player. It's not always the goaltender. Look at that Blues championship team back in 2019. And that Dean Sundquist and Barbashev line, that was a driving force down every single team's neck, every series and throughout the whole stretch. There was games where O'Reilly's scoring dried up. There was games where Binnington got yanked. I mean, remember, he got yanked a couple times, especially in that Boston series. He was a little bit loosey. But other games, you had other players pick each other up. So I think it's from this point moving forward, from a Blues standpoint, it's the internal competitiveness that that each player is going to have good nights and bad nights. And then when you sense that other players are having off nights, are you going to be the one to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I got to be the guy to get it tonight? If you're a Mackenzie McEachran, are you going to be a forechecker? Are you going to be a guy that scrums it up, gets to the front of the net? Maybe a goal goes off your knee pad to kind of jolt this team in the right direction. If you're Scott Perunovich, are you going to step over the boards with some force and some confidence and shake things up on the power play, and maybe you get a first power play goal, or you set up a great backdoor tap-in to get the team some life, right? And then as you learn that more and more, the good thing about it is that the players that generally carry that competitiveness, they're all of a sudden on the bench, BK, and they're like, oh, hey, you know what? I don't necessarily need to be the guy tonight because I got help, right? You need help. You need everyone pitching in. You need everyone to do it in different ways. And I think that's something the Blues are certainly still striving for right now.
Joe, final one for me. Bannister also talked a lot about how he's going to keep juggling up the lines until he finds line chemistry. We've seen a ton of different combinations. Has there been a line combination that stuck out to you that you say, you know what, those three need to stick together, other than Thomas Kyrou and Buchnevich?
Yeah, I really like the Kevin Hayes line. I like him with Neighbors. We've seen it's more of that pair, I would say, than anything.
Yeah.
Shen's kind of subbed down there a little bit. Brandon Saad's been down there for the most part. But, when Kevin Hayes is with Jake Neighbors and Brandon Saad, there is something great about that line. I think the two veterans of Hayes and Saad have been around the block multiple times. Saad's, of course, he's got the speed on the outside. He's very responsible, good in the D zone as well. Kevin Hayes is great on draws. You're going to win a lot of faceoffs. They've won a lot of faceoffs. Their puck possession's been good. And I think that, of course, with the youthful energy of Jake Neighbors being hard on the forecheck, Kevin Hayes can kind of stick around to the weeds a little bit and be the high guy and puck protect very well. So that's one line that I think has actually been probably the most consistent since Drew Bannister's come up, even though the Robert Thomas line has had some great moments, including that Dallas game, no doubt. But I think from a consistent, shift in, shift out, night in, night out basis, I'd have to actually point to that Kevin Hayes line. I think they've been terrific.
Hey, Joe, we appreciate the time as always, man. If we don't talk to you, we won't, actually, before Christmas. Merry Christmas to you and the family. We always enjoy being able to have these chats throughout the course of the NHL season. Enjoy yourself down in Miami. We'll talk with you again soon, my man.
That sounds good, fellas. You guys have a great Christmas as well, and we'll talk to you after the break.
You got it. Joe. That's Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for Bally Sports Midwest and your home of the Blues 101 ESPN. Always appreciate him hopping on with us. Alex, I want to continue our conversation that we had there a little bit with Joe about the compete level of this team. It's something that we have talked about way too often, and frankly, I'm exhausted by it all over the last 14 months or so. But it's not a conversation that's going away anytime soon. Drew Bannister added some fuel to the fire. We'll let you hear what he had to say about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about My Dentist 100 West Dental. And look, you're probably thinking that you need to get back to the dentist. You're like me, and you've got anxiety about going to the dentist. You don't want to have issues. Well, that's what you don't have with Dr. Pryor and his team at their 100 West office off of Manchester, because patient experience is at the front of the mind, and it's a very specific approach to dentistry. So it's not just a matter of open your mouth, no cavities, you're good, we'll see you in 6 months. No, they're checking everything. They're checking your gums. They're checking your teeth. They're checking your tongue. They're making sure that your overall health is in good shape. It's a preventative procedure that frankly gives me the peace of mind when I go to the dentist, so I know that somebody's not going to overlook a tumor like they did in the past and me lose 7 teeth. So get on out there to Dr. Pryor and his team today, 100 West Dental, and do it soon before the end of the year so that the insurance money doesn't go back to that insurance company. When you're out there, mention my name, Alex Ferrario, $1,000 off on an Invisalign package, and you can get a free whitening kit for a white Christmas if you mention 101 ESPN. Get with the best, 100 West Dental, 100westdental.com.
Taylor Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they visit the Florida Panthers. And we'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 6. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So far too many times this year, we have watched a Blues game and you can tell 10 minutes in, just don't got it tonight. They don't have it. For whatever reason, they came out flat, and it's not going to change. They get down by 2 goals, and the snowball effects that we have seen so many times, it takes place. Alex, you had the stat yesterday about how often the Blues have given up, 3 or more goals?
16 times this season they've given up 3 or more, or 2 or more goals in a 3-minute span or less.
Just embarrassing. It can't happen. They give up a goal, and then boom, they're done. They just completely deflate. It's as if nothing else the rest of that day matters. We've all been with somebody like that, right? Where something goes wrong in their day and they become the Eeyore. Like the rest of the day, there's just a cloud hanging overhead where it's raining on them, and there's nothing you can do to change it, right? We've all had a buddy that'll be that way. That's who the Blues are. Something goes awry for them, and it is just over. And so I found it really interesting, Alex. Yesterday, after practice, Drew Bannister was asked about the way that he formatted the practice. At the very beginning, they had a compete drill, which is not something you see this time of the year very often in a morning skate. And yet, the Blues decided to do exactly that. Why was that, Bannister?
You know, it's something I felt obviously yesterday with our start, we weren't ready to go. So I think just to start off, the first drill, the dread day, is to get these guys going and getting them competing, to kind of make sure that we start off on the right foot here at practice this morning.
And to put this into perspective, so what they do is they take the nets and they put them lateral on the ice, so it shrinks the rink. So you're basically playing a full game of hockey in one zone from board to board. So you guys are having to compete in that little area, and it's something that a lot of coaches do, to the point of what Drew Bannister's making there. You're basically telling your guys, like, you need to get engaged. You can't wait for something to happen. We can't just tiptoe through practice and just pass, shoot, and say we're good to go. There's got to be a little bit of compete there. And I appreciate Drew Bannister doing this. Like, it's not that he's doing this and Craig Berube never did this. Berube did this, but it's different when a new coach steps in, and after 2 games of being a coach where it goes well and 1 game going poorly, you say, we've got to put some compete back into this hockey game, back into this hockey team, and so you do this drill. He's sending the message after he already sent the message in the game to Pavel Buchnevich that, hey, we need more compete if you want to play in the hockey game for the Blues. The next day of practice, this is going to be a normal practice. We're going out there, and you have to find whatever it is that brings out the compete in you as a hockey player. And if you can't, then we're going to go somewhere else with it. And that's what he's trying to do with this drill. The question is, does it translate into action?
I remember I think it was at the end of the season, I remember Army bringing up a question about the Blues practice, where he'd say, I'd be sitting at Centene, where his office is, overlooking the practice rink, and going, I just see us kind of going through the motions. You know, shots are being missed. Doesn't feel like we're going hard at it. And I like Bannister, who comes in and says, hey, that 1 game of non-compete, no, we got to figure it out, and this is maybe how we do it. And look, this may not work. We'll see how they respond tonight. But I like the idea of, hey, we're struggling with our compete early in games. Let's do it right off the bat, because You're right, BK. This is not a normal thing to do. This at this point in the season, where you're 30-plus games into the year, this is more of like, I could see this at training camp. I could see this maybe like in the first week of the season.
This is a heavy drill to do in the middle of a season.
Yeah, because now these guys are getting banged up. And look, Blues have been pretty lucky with injuries so far, but I'm sure those guys are. I'm sure those guys are dealing with, my muscles are sore, my back hurts, I've blocked a shot on my foot, my foot's not feeling great. I mean, Sunquist had a black eye the other day.
Hey, I'm never at 100%.
None of them are at this point.
Season.
And you're not at 100%, and because of the struggle to be ready to go from the get-go, Bannister says, we are going to work, and we are going to work hard right at the beginning of practice. I love the approach from Coach Bannister. I really do. I love the fact that he's willing to say, you know what, I know this drill's going to suck, and it sucks at any time we do it. We're going to do it at the very beginning of practice.
It's just, as a Blues fan listening right now, it's frustrating to hear this. And I did the podcast earlier today with Donnie, and Donnie was like, I just don't understand how a group of players just don't have that fight in them. And to Joe's point, you've got guys that that just don't have it they don't have it deep inside of them that says, if I don't compete, I'm not going to be here. Because a lot of them feel like, well, you know what? What's going to really happen at this point? And that's the infuriating part, that a coach has to step in after 2 games where you played so well and you had to compete, and it dips away and you say, well, we've got to go out there and find the compete. This has been 2 years of searching for the compete. And I'll go back to what Jordan Binnington said after Craig Berube was fired. Like, you got to have some respect for the jersey you're wearing and that you're playing in the NHL. And if you don't want to be here, then get out, because there are a ton of guys who do want to be here. You've got a lot of players on your roster that have the capability of going deep into a playoff run. But if other guys aren't, well, then you're losing hockey.
It's why I don't envy people that have to hire for a living. Like people that are in HR, that are like a part of the hiring process. Man, there are a lot of people out there that can give a great interview, and you leave and you're just blown away. And you look at the resume and you're like, hot damn, this totally qualified, had a great interview. I don't know what more we could ask for from this candidate. The part that you have no idea, though, is how they're going to perform on a day-to-day basis. The grind of a job is really what dictates whether or not you're going to be good at it, right? Think about like Cody Schrader. This is football compared to hockey, but Cody Schrader, after one of the Mizzou games this year, was out there the next morning at like 5 a.m. on the practice field before anybody else was at the office, ready to go, going through drills. There was a story about him where last year he had a final one day, had to miss practice for it, and had one of the coaches send him the entire script. And so after the practice, after his final, he went out and took the field on his own, full gear and everything, in the snow, and was going out there going through everything. That is commitment. That is a guy that's willing to put in the work, and we saw it pay off for him this season on the field. A lot of the guys on the Blues, it feels like, aren't willing to put in that work. And it's about the grind. It is about the stuff that is not glamorous. It's not about going out there and just having the goal production. That doesn't just come to you, man. It's about putting in the work first and being prepared to get ready to go. A lot of people have in the morning a routine that they go through that allows them to get through the day, right? And it almost feels as if the Blues need to go through a bit of a routine, a build up at the beginning of the game before they're actually ready to go out there and just really get going.
Yeah, somebody needs to punch them in the side of the face to get them going in the game.
They're a boxer that gets into a fight and they take the first round to just absorb punches. They don't throw any themselves. They're just waiting, and they need to get hit in the face a few times before they respond. And it just becomes a matter of, do those punches to the face knock them out, or are they able to bounce back? Or are they not going to get knocked down? Are they able to withstand the blows to the body? If they do, they've got a chance to win the game. If they don't, then they end up getting knocked down, and instead of getting back up off of the mat, they just wait for the count, man. And they're like, we're good. We'll just go ahead and lay here. This is easier than getting punched in the face in round number 2.
Every dog has their day, right, guys?
And I know there's people on the text line that are getting annoyed by us talking about the word compete over and over and over again.
Doug Armstrong used that word.
I promise you, I am getting sick of talking about the word compete. I want to break down the actual games, but there's no way to talk about the games without breaking down the compete. It's the only thing that matters right now, because none of what they're doing on the ice, power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5, none of that stuff matters unless they actually compete on the ice. That is the prerequisite, man. It's like going to school and having a terrible attendance. Well, I can't really grade your papers. You're not here to do the papers. It requires you to be in attendance first, and then we can get to all of the other stuff. And that's where the Blues are at right now, is they're not competing, man.
Yeah.
And there's games when it looks great. And it looks great against some of the best teams in the league. And then the very next game, you go against Tampa Bay on the road, and it's like, man, they didn't even show up for this one.
They lack the ability to look at a game and say, and I'm saying this as a team, not as individuals, because there's individuals on the team that can do it, but they lack as a team the ability to look at a game when they go down by 1 and say, we're still in this, guys. They lack the confidence of, we're still in this, guys. And especially when another team in that Tampa Bay game was so perfect of the way of what I'm talking about, is Tampa just kept pushing them into the back of their own zone, right into the front of the net. And the Blues looked at it and said, we have no way to stop this. The way you stop this is you put the puck in their end and you force them back into the zone. So they lack that strength to push back against the other team. They lack the confidence of knowing that you're still in this, and they lack the ability to grab the momentum back. And until you find some of those elements into your hockey game, it's going to be exactly what we've seen this season, where one game you look great because the other team's having an off night, but most of the time you're the team that has the off night.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone on BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. T-Bone's got one more thing he wants to add on this. We'll get into that on the other side. And I've got a question for Alex about Colton Parayko. And if the Blues are wasting his prime, we'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. We'll get to some of your questions here in just a moment, but first I want to get to T-Bone's final thought that he had on our last segment. We were talking about the Blues, their lack of compete. T-Bone, you had one other thing before we had to get out of there. What else did you have to say about their lack of compete?
Yeah, well, Alex, I mentioned, how they go down and they just can't come back in games, and it is a lack of confidence issue. And I think another part of that to kind of tie into the lack of confidence is they just don't have an identity either. They don't have the one thing that they can say, we can go to this tonight. We're a heavy forecheck team. We can get on the forecheck tonight. We may not completely have our game, but we know we're good at this.
See,
and
I would say they do have one thing. The problem is that one thing is something that, like, if you rely too much on it, it's going to break. And their one thing is they have a great goaltender.
Oh, I was thinking penalty kill. They should play down by. They should play down by a guy every single game.
It's the same idea, right? What do they always say about the PK? Your best penalty killer is your goalie.
This is where I would.
You know why? Sorry, T-Bone. You know why the penalty kill looks so great and why
Urgency.
we're saying it's. Yeah, urgency and compete, because if you don't, you're going to get scored on.
And there's only certain players that play on the PK.
There's three separate lines of two guys that play on the penalty
it's
kill.
interesting how that works, isn't it? The guys that are on the PK sure seem to work their asses off.
So maybe if you do some Sherlock Holmes detective work, you could find out who those guys we're talking about.
To be fair, Booch is on it. He kind of got benched last game.
He had a bad night.
Yeah, he had a rough night.
Buchnevich is not somebody that I typically question his effort. He had a bad night. It happens.
You don't get labeled the best penalty killer in Blues franchise history by BK if he's not there.
I would say this, though. I don't know if, I don't think you can say a goaltender can be an identity for a team. If that makes sense.
Be. It absolutely. Because the Tampa Bay Lightning have one of the all-time great goaltenders in Andrei Vasilevsky, who's having kind of a weird start to the season, but neither here nor there. Their identity is not Andrei Vasilevsky. It's something they can lean on if they need to, but their identity is literally everything else.
But
that's
the key, though.
Well.
When they don't have their game, they lean on it. And the Islanders are the team that is their goaltending identity. They're a team that is stingy.
But they also have a tight-knit defense where they're playing well in their own zone. The Blues, all they got is the goalie. And when they traffic cones around him, but they've got the goalie who's going to stop the puck more often than not.
And when they lean on their goaltender, typically that goaltender's not able to come up big on it because you're allowing. So, I mean, when you allow three of the other team's players to stand in front of you, not much you could do in that circumstance.
All right. The other thing that I wanted to get to before we get to some of these texts, Alex, we read the piece today from Jeremy Rutherford. It's really worth your time. It's over in The Athletic about Colton Parayko and how he is now the longest tenured Blue since
That's wild.
Since they decided to trade Robert Bortuzzo. Alex, the big takeaway from it was basically hey, everybody with the Blues and everybody that plays against the Blues seems to agree. Colton Parayko's back to the guy that they signed him to be. He had the back surgery. He didn't look the same. And this year he's got his speed back, which is changing the way that he's able to play. Question that I had for you. Are the Blues wasting Colton Parayko's prime?
Yes.
Right now?
They absolutely are. And surprise, surprise, I'm the one that's going to take this stance right here. But you don't get 6'6" defensemen who could play 25 minutes a night, who other players, as in Jonathan Marchessault, talk about how fast he is with the puck on his stick.
And that's not just his opinion. Based on his own metrics this year, he's in the 95th percentile by speed.
And I go back to what Joe talked to Connor McDavid. I think it was last year or it was a couple of years ago. And McDavid said he's the one that's the toughest to play against because he's so big and so fast. And this dude is 30 years old. Now, you just had some back issues. Hopefully they stay away from him for a long time. But here's the thing. We all know it doesn't get easier as you get older, especially when you're logging 25 minutes a night. The Blues are wasting a 6'6" defenseman who could be fighting deep into a playoff spot almost every single season because he's got that size, he's got the speed, he's got the ability, he's got a heavy shot, but yet they've put non-compete players around him. And now by the time you're going to come out of this, you're going to be 33, 34 years old on the back end of this, and you're going to be searching for this type of player, which, by the way, guys, these guys don't come around very often.
So I'm going to say something that I have not said at any point in Colton Parayko's career. I would like to see him on the power play. I'm actually being totally serious this time around. So he's on pace this year for 13 goals and 26 points. That's all at 5-on-5 because he doesn't play on the power play. His previous career high in goals was 10. He hasn't hit more than the points are pretty similar to what he's had in previous seasons, but it's the goal scoring that's changed. And he's starting to take the shot more often, dude. He is on pace this year to take more. He's on pace for 159 shots. His shots on goal last year was 133. The year before that, 135. The last time that he had this many shots on goal was the 2020 season when he was the guy that the Blues signed to the long-term deal. So I think I would actually like to see it, honestly, at this point. What do you have to lose? There's nothing that he's going to take away chemistry-wise that's already started to develop in that group.
So they used him on the power play in his first 4 years in the NHL.
And I don't think he was very good at it.
Well, I mean, he was better than what people are giving him credit for. Now, he wasn't the number one guy because Alex Pietrangelo was the top guy. Right. Shattenkirk played on it as well. But they utilized Colton Parayko as the one-time shot from the blue line. And a power play that was, I'm looking at this right now, in 2015-16, top 5, top 5, top 5, top 10. And those were all years that he played over 100 minutes on those power plays. The other thing, too, Curves looked this up a couple of nights ago. So in Colton Parayko's career, he's played over 26 minutes 23 times. The Blues won 19 of those 23 games when he plays over 26 minutes.
That was the change that we talked about in game number 1 under Bannister, was he just played Parayko more. He was like, hey, we're just going to eat a bunch of ice time with him.
And that was only like 26-15. Like, You know how you play 26 minutes or more? You get power play time. I'd throw him out there. I don't know why you wouldn't throw him out there.
Yeah, at this point, the power play is so unbelievably broken. I've got a guy that has, the hardest shot on the team, if nothing else. It's going to take some weird bounces. It's going to create some opportunities in front of the net. He's more willing to take the shot this year. We've seen Robert Thomas. He is shooting more, and he's seeing the results, and he's being rewarded with a bunch of power play time, etc. I think it's time to do the same for Colton Parayko.
Can I give you a tinfoil as to why he's not on the power play? And this is just tinfoil, no reporting here. I think it's because his own players don't want him on the power play because they're afraid of his shot. Nobody wants to be in front of the net.
I mean, it happened in the last game where he hurt somebody.
Yeah, Mikhail Sergachev took it off the freaking ankle and had to limp off the ice. But you know what? If I'm his teammate, I want that on my power play.
I agree.
Because the only thing that's going to do, as long as I'm not the one in the way of it, but, you're hockey players, so you should plan on that, is it's going to create rebounds because Al McKenna's made a career of it. Nobody wanted to get in front of those shots. I just don't understand why when you look at that power play and you say, well, something's got to give, throw these guys out there and see what happens.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Let's get to some of these before we get to the Blues playing up and down to their opponent. From the 314, guys, do you think that Jordan Walker was overrated as a prospect?
No. Next question,
You
please.
don't get T-Bone screaming into the microphone if you're overrated.
I don't know how you could say he was an overrated prospect because...
Probably if you're looking at the defense, but he wasn't an outfielder.
Yeah, and honestly, that was more of a mess up from the Cardinals than anything that Jordan Walker could have done because he should have never played third base for the big chunk of that year in Springfield. They moved him to the outfield in August of that year or July? He should have been playing outfield.
When Arenado was on the team for 2 years already.
Yeah, it made no sense. But no, not a lot of kids at his age, 21 years old, come into the big leagues, hit over 275, and have an OPS above 780. That's unheard of. That's really good. So he lived up to the prospect hype.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, Yamamoto's a free agent. It seems like all the contract offers are becoming public information now. So who do you think the Cardinals are going, or when do you think it's going to be reported that the Cardinals officially dropped out of the bidding?
Never.
I think, guys, we can go ahead and say right now the Cardinals are not in on this. I know people want them so badly to be in on Yamamoto, and I don't blame you. But I wouldn't be in on this. 10 years, $300 million? There are so many questions. I think he's going to be great. I do. There is a lot of risk built into the fact that he might not be great. We have no idea how he's going to translate to the major league level. I think he'll be good. We don't know, though. And a 10-year deal for a starting pitcher is a huge amount of risk, man. And giving him a 10-year deal that's, the third biggest contract ever given in the history of baseball to a pitcher? Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not. And maybe you can call me somebody that is soft for that. I'm unwilling to go to that length for Yamamoto. I get why it's exciting. I get why you want your team to be involved in that bidding. I personally would not be, though. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Take it or leave it, guys. Ollie will have a sub-500 record next year, get fired, and Yachty will be the manager for the Cardinals in 2025.
I'll leave it. I don't think he's going to have a sub-500. But I also believe he's not going to be performing to the level that they expect, and I think he's going to be gone by the All-Star break. And I think Yachty's taken over for the next season.
I want to leave it, but I don't say that with a lot of confidence because I don't see how I don't know how much better they're better, but I don't know how good they truly are right now.
Wait till they get Yamamoto.
I would like to say, like, I'm not going to do this, so give me a second. I'll give you the answer here in just a moment. But my true answer is let's talk in 3 months to find out where the Cardinals are at. Like, if they added Josh Hader or if they added 2 bullpen arms that are legit high-leverage caliber players, I think you could see this team being pretty good next year, like winning 90 to 93 games. As of today, as currently constructed, I don't think they're good enough. I don't think the current roster is good enough to make it to the playoffs and do anything meaningful. And if that ends up happening, yeah, this team is craved for a winner. And I think at that point in time, you'd probably see Ollie let go. But I think it would be after the season. I do not think they're going to make an in-season change next year. So I'll leave it, but not because I'm like overly optimistic about the current version of the St. Louis Cardinals. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get into our football pick'em for the upcoming week. T-Bone's off tomorrow, so we'll do the pick'em a day early. As of today, I am up on these two schmucks 8-6. They have 6 points so far and are 2 weeks through the pick'em.
Did you just
I have
cuss at
8
me?
points. We'll get into that, though, coming up in about 15 minutes. Next, the Blues don't seem to have their ability to play their best game regardless of opponent or situation. How do you develop that? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friend and insurance agent, Tracy Bibb. At this time of the year, you're going into the new year. You just paid those personal property taxes, so you got to make sure your home and your car are in the best shape possible. And to do that, you want to make sure that the insurance is there. If something pops up, and something will pop up, you know, a gutter problem, a tree falls on your roof, hail damage, snow, ice, you got to make sure you've got the person to call. And it's not an 800 number, it's Tracy Bibb. Why? Because the customer service is at its all-time best with her. She's always available for you. You call, she answers, and she is there to help you through the problem. Plus, her and her team are always looking for the most competitive rate. So give Tracy a call today at Allstate and mention my name, Alex Ferrario, and she'll walk you through the whole process for a non-committal quote. Free, easy. She'll even cancel your previous insurance agency. So it makes life a lot easier for you with Tracy Bibb and her team. 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, coming up here in just a little bit, we'll get to our football pick 'em. We're going to be joined by the Panthers color commentator in about 30 minutes or so. He gets to watch Matthew Tkachuk on a regular basis. We'll ask him what that experience is like.
Come on, man. We moved on.
You have.
We got Cairo.
Should we talk about the 3 things that we love in life? Should we spend the next 15 minutes
my
doing
wife,
that?
my 2-year-old, and my 1-year-old.
There you go. That was good. T-Bone? 3 things you love?
Beers, dogs.
Beers, dogs.
You like dogs?
Not dogs, hot dogs.
Dogs and hot dogs.
Oh,
Which
well,
one do you
there you
prefer?
go. And Meemaw. You love Meemaw.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, honorable mention.
Okay. I mean, I want to go home for Christmas. What
I
about
love
you,
my
man?
wife. I love Luca, and I love beer. Big beer guy, you know.
I love Mike. I love Mike Ryder. Oh, he's not in there. Never mind.
You love seltzers.
I do love seltzers.
yourself
I love
some
me some
Pink
Pink Whitney.
So,
Is this like
got
your
that over
opening
with.
to like get us to thank you for a Christmas gift?
yeah, if you wanted to mention it, you can do that now.
BK brought us Christmas gifts when we adamantly said the 3 of us were not exchanging gifts this year, and then this guy walks in with 2 bags. Like, "Whoa,
So,
Merry Christmas, guys!"
And my New Year's resolution was to be healthier in life, and guess what? I can't do it now.
Mine was to stop drinking on the golf course, and not anymore.
Full disclosure, I got home yesterday and Kara said, "Hey, what are you doing for the guys on the show for Christmas?" And I said, "Oh, we all agreed that we're not going to do anything." And she said, "You're joking, right?" It's like, "No, seriously, like we're not going to do the whole gift exchange thing." She said, "You know you have to get them something, right?" I said, "No, Kara, I really don't. We all agreed we're not doing that." She said, "No, if you don't do that, like they're definitely going to think less of you." I was like,
now,
"Okay, well."
Can I tell you what I would do? And this is why you should never listen to me on any kind of marriage advice as the single guy. I would have just told her I did it and then not actually gotten gifts for the 2 of us.
Well, I try not to lie to my wife. It's something that I've been practicing.
Wow. Come on, man.
Well, then you got experience doing it.
Come on, man. Rule number 1: you don't lie to the missus.
I know, but it's just a small lie.
A little bit of breaking news. T-Bone, this is a you breaking news thing, not a...
Breaking news!
Mizzou has signed Kirby Moore and Blake Baker to contract extensions.
It wouldn't
So
even
the
worth
offensive
mine.
and defensive coordinator are going to be locked in long term. If you missed it, Kirby Moore was on with the morning show earlier today. Good conversation talking about why this team had the amount of success that they did this year. And a big part of it, he's not going to say it, I will though, was Kirby Moore. Kirby Moore stepping in and being in charge of the offense this year allowed Eli Drinkwitz to take more of a CEO, a 500-foot view of the program, and I think it made everybody better as a result. Blake Baker had some opportunities where he could listen to some potential head coaching gigs. I know there were some reports out there that Kirby Moore was high on the Notre Dame list of offensive coordinators. They're both going to be sticking around.
Hashtag STP.
Mizzou is officially in all-in mode for 2024. They are college football playoff or bust. That's where we're at with that.
College football playoff, college football championship or bust.
All right, speaking of morning show interviews, Robert Thomas was on with them yesterday, Alex, and I thought he said something interesting that really caught my ear. I didn't love it, to be totally honest with you.
So it wasn't interesting.
It was interesting. I just
it just
didn't
pissed
love
you
hearing
off.
it.
Okay, good.
He was asked about why it seems like the Blues don't always bring their A game at the beginning of these first periods. And here was his answer, and I want to say, full disclosure, I cut out the first portion of this where he talks about travel, and he talks about how it's hard to, but not everybody's at 100%.
Because
all that
BK
stuff.
thinks that's an explanation.
I think it's more of an excuse, and he even said as much, hey, I don't want to excuse things, but, travel, battling stuff, all that. This is the part that I found to be a little more
All
interesting.
that.
The league this year is so cohesive. You're looking at teams that are beating other teams. Anyone can win on any night, and there's feel to the game, there's flow to the game, and when those things are against you, it's really hard to get going. And these aren't excuses. It's just part of the process and how we feel and think out there. And there's certain ways to kind of gain that momentum and stuff. And I think that's the part that we're lacking when we're not feeling the best as a team.
It's hard to get going. There's momentum. We're not good at it. Alex.
That's...
I mean, it's honest. I will say this.
It's very
I like
honest.
it when guys are honest, and that is an honest answer as to what's gone wrong with the Blues this year. The problem is he's saying what's true, and I hate that it's true, man.
And I'm trying to, form this the best way possible, and it might come back to bite me, but that's kind of a losing mentality.
Yep.
to say that there's flow in games and they sometimes work against you, you know how you avoid those flows in games that work against you?
You punch somebody in the face.
You ram it down the other team's throat. Like, let's go back to the Vancouver Canucks game. That wasn't a game that the flow went against you. That was a game that Vancouver basically said, we are better than you, and we are going to prove it to you in the first 3 minutes of the hockey game.
I mean, think about the response that they had coming. Now, you can't do this every game. I understand that. It's hard to say. But the response they had after Craig Berube was fired, that first period, man, there was nothing schematically that changed. There was nothing about the lines that changed. That was the Blues going out there and beating the ever-loving hell out of whoever the opponent was that night. And it didn't result in like a 6-0 lead at the end of the first period, but they clearly tilted the ice in their favor. They were the team that had the urgency compared to the opposition. And I totally understand that is impossible to sustain over the 82-game schedule. I get that. But can you get something that's like 70% of that for most of the games? If you could just do that as a team, we would be having none of the same conversations that we've been having lately.
He also said that there's ways to gain momentum in hockey games. And look, not to just pick apart his answer, but the ways to gain or regain momentum in a hockey game are things that the Blues don't seem to want to do. It's getting into a little bit of the post-whistle stuff to kind of get underneath the skin of the other team. It's winning those board battles that the Blues did awesome against Ottawa and Dallas. Like, I will give them full credit. Every time Dallas went to a loose puck, the Blues had two guys on him and made them regret that decision. And then the Tampa Bay Lightning game, it was this mindset. It was there's flows to the game and we've got to figure out what flow this one is. No, you don't. They were waiting to find out what Tampa was. Was Tampa a team coming off of a road trip that was going to be slow out of the gate and we could pounce? Or are they going to bring it at us and we got to figure out how to do? It's like they're playing chess. When you can't play chess in hockey these days, you have to start from the get-go and set the tone before the other team sets the tone, because when the other team sets the tone, they take a 1-goal lead, and now you're trying to catch up to that tone, and you're not going to be able to unless you do something.
So I know some people are sick of hearing Craig Berube at this point, but he was on the Ray and Dregs podcast yesterday for TSN, and I thought it was a really good interview that they did with him, and he had some thoughts about the Blues, but really it's big picture hockey stuff that he was talking about. And he was asked about how difficult it is for young players to adapt to the NHL to become winning players, not just to get there and to succeed and have the goal scoring production, right? To become winning players that contribute for postseason contenders. Here's what Craig Berube had to say.
I think it's just they need time. Like when they're coming out of junior or college, and they're young and they're skilled and they put up a lot of numbers in junior and college and they come to the NHL, it's a totally different animal. But they still are trying to perform the way they performed in junior and college, and it takes time to get them bad habits out of their game and get them to play a predictable game, and it's got to be 200 feet. It's really important to play 200 feet. You got to check and you got to do the right things. And, you know, when the playoffs start, it becomes real hard. Yeah. Like, it's tight, it's physical, and when you're confronted and when you're in those battles as a skilled player, that's where you need to perform your best, because you're going to get confronted and you're going to be in those battles night in and night out, almost every shift. There's not going to be any room, and that's where you got to perform, and that's where you got to come through. Throughout the year, there's games night in and night out where the checking's not very good. It's not very confrontational. You know, with 82 games, it's hard to have that compete night in and night out. So some of those guys can get by and score and do some good things and put numbers up.
He had one other comment, Alex. I want to get to this too, and then I want to hear what your thoughts are on this and how it pertains to this Blues team after you hear what Berube's talking about, big picture for what wins in hockey today. He was asked about what it takes to win a championship in the NHL. Not just to be a good team, not to put up a bunch of points. What does it take to win a championship in the NHL? Here's what he had to say.
If you want to win a championship in the National Hockey League, there's a certain formula to it, and you have to have size and grit, in my opinion, to get that done. And you have to be highly competitive for 2.5 months at least. And it's a hard process. Like, it's a grind. It's a day in and day out. And but I truly believe that playing a predictable, hard, forward-checking defensive game is what really gets it done in the end in the playoffs.
He's not wrong. I mean, look at the teams that have won the Stanley Cup in the last 2 years. It was Vegas last year, big, predictable, hard-checking team. That's why they went out and got Ivan Barbashev. And then the Colorado Avalanche. That team played eerily similar to the way that the Blues played in 2019 because they were a very painful team to go up against because they were willing to throw the body around. And the part that sticks out to me the most is what he said there. It's a 2 to 3 month commitment. Where this is not a you get to pick and choose when you want to show up. This is you've got to have the mental fortitude to realize that I am going to be in pain for the next 3 months, and I don't care because I want to win the Stanley Cup. It's going to come down to not worrying about who gets paid the most money or who the best players are. It's worrying about I want to win the Stanley Cup for the city and for the team, and it's what they had in 2019. It's what every year you feel like a Stanley Cup championship has, and it's something the Blues is still searching for. And I truly think that the Blues put that 3-year retool label on last year because they thought this was the year they could at least squeak into the playoffs. And if you want to start the process of retooling, you got to make the playoffs once. The LA Kings made the playoffs after a year that they lost. So 14-15, they did miss the playoffs. Next year they made it. Next year they missed. Next year they made it. Then they missed it for 3 straight years. And then 2 years ago they got in. Last year they got in. This year they look like a juggernaut. If you miss the playoffs again, this cycle is still 3 years because you've got to get a taste of postseason to figure out how to win if you want to have success.
When I hear those comments, what I immediately go to is, man, I worry that this team is not going to have that mindset. Like, you can lose it so quickly because you forget how hard it is to succeed in the postseason. So even the guys that have been there and tasted that success, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou to a degree, he had 7 goals in that last playoff season that the Blues had. If you look at the plus-minus, though, when he was out on the ice, despite the fact that he had a bunch of goal-scoring production, he was actually a minus in the Blues' postseason run that year. And if you remember early on, he really struggled against the Wild and then finally eventually found his game when they went up against Colorado, and he was the guy that kind of kept them in it. Who are the players on this team that recently have tasted that playoff success? I guess Brandon Saad would be the most recent one. And so if you get 2, 3, 4, 5 years removed from that by the time that you're getting back to it, are these guys ready for it? When you get back to the postseason, are they going to be the ones that are like, okay, we know exactly what it takes to have success here? Because David Perron had that. Ryan O'Reilly was that type of player even before he experienced playoff success. Pat Maroon, that type of player before he experienced the playoff success. Guys that win or succeed the way that a lot of the skill players around the league do, for a lot of them, it takes a couple of years of failure before you get to the place of being able to break through. Connor McDavid has failed in the postseason. He's a good player. His teams have had success while he's been on the ice, but the team is not having overall success because it's hard to win the way that they play in the postseason. You look over to Colorado. Man, it took years of trying to figure out what it takes to win in the postseason before they finally figured it out. So it is something that I do have a little bit of a fear of is, okay, how long does it take to get back to having that winning hockey in the playoffs for this team? And by that point, are you then going to have to start building it back up again? And it's going to take another 2 or 3 years after the retool to really have success in the postseason with this group of players.
Well, and to be fair, I never thought Vladimir Tarasenko was going to be that type of player. I thought Vladimir Tarasenko was always going to be a liability in the playoffs, and he proved me wrong.
But he eventually learned. He got to the playoffs how many times before he became that guy?
Yeah, absolutely. He got there, and they kept losing in the first round, and then they got the taste of the conference final and realized
that banging your head against the wall repeatedly before you figure out, okay, this is what it takes for us to win.
And it takes a coach to come in and hold every single player to that level of expectation like Craig Berube did. So it's a perfect match, and it was why my frustration on questions and answers is there for Colton Parayko, because you have elements that you should be a team that could compete for a Stanley Cup every single year. When you've got some really good defensemen, when you've got an incredible goaltender, and you have elements of Stanley Cup success and talent. But the problem is the compete. And you don't have that right now. And that is the part that, very frustrating, because you're trying to match the past, the present, and the future all into one jumble of a roster, and I don't know how that's going to look.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up tonight, Blues at the Panthers. We'll talk to the Panthers color commentator, Bill Lindsay, in about 10 minutes or so, get his thoughts on what it's like to watch Matthew Tkachuk, who competes at a really high level on a nightly basis. We'll get into that coming up in about 10 minutes or so. Football Pick'em coming up next. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It's time for our football pick'em. We do this each and every week. We are 2 weeks into this month's version of the pick'em. I am up with 8 points so far in the first 2 weeks of this round. Alex and T-Bone are tied with 6 points. Alex was 2-1 last week. T-Bone went 1-2. So the way that we're going to get things started today, we will have T-Bone as our first pick. Alex will go second. I will go third. If you're new to this, the way that it works is very simple. We make 3 picks over the weekend. All of them are against the spread, no props, no totals, nothing like that. And we will rank them on a scale of 1 to 3, 3 being the most points, and then we will go over these next week. T-Bone, you'll kick us off today. What is your 1-point game heading into this weekend? By the way, Thursday Night Football is on the table if you want to take it.
Monday Night Football is too, right?
Also on the table because we will be off on Monday. So the only rules are it has to be taking place before we come back on the air, and this week that opens up some more opportunities for us.
I'm going to go to the Battle of Florida to start things here for my 1-point play. Jags at Tampa Bay. I like Jacksonville +1, basically a pick 'em. I think Jacksonville's a better football team, so I like Jacksonville +1. It's probably going to be a close game, but when you're basically getting a pick 'em, just take the team you really like, and I like Jacksonville, so give me Jags +1 at Tampa Bay.
My second on this one? All right, 1-point play for me. I am going to stick with my Cowboys. I think they're better than Miami. I don't trust Miami's defense, and I don't know if they're going to be 100% healthy in this game. So I think the Cowboys, even though they're on the road, I like them being the underdogs, especially coming off of a lackluster performance. +1.5, I will take every day of the week as my 1-point play for Dallas.
All right, my first pick up here, the 1-point play, is the Bills. I love the Bills, minus the 12 points. They're taking on the Chargers. Easton Stick looked terrible last week against the Raiders. This team has completely quit. They have nothing left to play for. Their coach just got fired. They're playing on a Saturday evening going up against a Bills team that is highly motivated. They've still got everything on the table. I love the Bills. I know they're going east to west, T-Bone, but it's a night game. I'm not worried about that. Give me Josh Allen and the Bills minus the 12 points.
East to west, that's not a...
It's not the same thing, man.
Yeah, come on. Learn your lesson. You jumped in before I could jump on to Alex's pick. I like the Cowboys in the +1.5 at the Miami Dolphins as well. The Dolphins don't show up when they're playing a good team. And look, I know Dallas, you can make kind of the same argument for them. I think they're better. I don't think Miami's going to have the run game to just run it down their throat like we saw last week by Buffalo. So I love Dallas +1.5 at Miami for my 2-point play.
All right, my 2-point play, I'm taking a home team, a favorite, and I'm taking the Chicago Bears against the Cardinals, -4.5. As much as I like Justin Fields, I'm a little nervous with this one, but here's the thing. I think Arizona is just done for. I think Arizona realizes they're done for, and I'm not sure how much more compete they have in him the rest of the season. Whereas, not that the Bears have anything to play for, but I think it's more pride for Justin Fields right now, and the pride for Justin Fields is going to keep them above the Cardinals. I think they win this by a touchdown, maybe more, so the Bears -4.5 is my 2-point play.
All right, I'm going with another 4.5-point favorite. I've got this over on Caesars. It's a different line. If you go to FanDuel, some of the other places have it differently. But on Caesars, you can get the 49ers -4.5 right now. The Ravens are talking about how they're underrated and they're being disrespected. Nah, man, you're not being disrespected. You're going up against the best team in the NFL this weekend, and you're not as good as them. I'm sorry. That's the way this works as you're on the road. So I've got the 49ers minus the 4.5 points. They remind us all once again on Monday night, Christmas Day, that they are the best team in the league. No close second. Ravens might be up there, but once again, they're going to be Big Brother going to remind you you're not as good as them. 49ers minus 4.5.
I almost took that game, but I just didn't have the cojones to do it.
I had it at 5.5. Keep the 4.5, but regardless, I didn't want to take it because I don't have the cojones to look at that and say that the Ravens are going to lose by a touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. My 3-point play, and it opens it up because we're doing the pick'em here on Thursday. I'm going to Thursday Night Football. Al Michaels has got himself a good one. Hopefully he's excited tonight.
I was going to say, are we sure?
This is a playoff
These are two mediocre
battle.
teams.
Yeah, but it's a playoff battle. You can convince yourself it's a good game.
It's a playoff battle like tonight's a playoff battle between the Blues and Panthers.
No, you can't convince yourself of that one.
It's a Stanley Cup preview.
Rams, definitely not that. Rams -4 versus Saints. I think the Rams are a better football team. I think they're probably about a touchdown. They should be, in my opinion, a touchdown favorite. So when it's just at -4, I like them. The Saints, I can't get a good feel for the Saints.
You can. They're bad.
Yeah.
And so are the Rams.
No, the Rams got a good offense. Defensively, they're mediocre. But I really like the Rams -4. I think they're just a better football team. I think they win this by a touchdown or more tonight.
I'm going to stick with it just to piggyback. I also have the Rams tonight minus the 4 points. The Saints are a terrible football team, man. They've won 2 games in a row. Kudos. Good for you. You beat the Giants and the Carolina Panthers, who are the 2 worst teams in the league. Prior to that, you lost against Detroit. You lost against Atlanta. You lose against Minnesota. This is a bad football team. I don't want to hear anything more about Derek Carr. He has made them worse than what they were a year ago, and I didn't think that was possible. So give me the Rams as well. I think they're much better. They at least have an identity, which is their offense. I don't know what the Saints do well. They used to be a defensive-minded football team. They're not that anymore. The defense isn't very good. I like the Rams. I think they score 30+. I think they win by well more than 4 points. Give me the Rams minus the 4.
Well, I'm taking another NFC team that's actually in a playoff battle and, frankly, the better team than the other NFC West opponent, and I'm taking the Seahawks -2.5. Road dog against the Titans, but I think the Titans are just terrible, and I think Seattle... I mean, the fact that they're still fighting with the Rams for one of those playoff spots tells you everything you need to know, but I do think that they've got a little bit of extra jolt now after that victory that they just had against Philadelphia. So watch out for that offense. I'm not sure Tennessee can stop it. So Seahawks -2.5, my 3-point play.
Those are our picks for the upcoming weekend. T-Bone off today. We did it a day early. So T-Bone has the Jaguars, the Cowboys, and the Rams. Alex has the Cowboys as well. He's got the Bears and the Seahawks, and I am going with the Bills, the 49ers, and the Rams. We'll see how we do over the weekend. An expanded menu as we've got Thursday all the way to Monday. We are off on Monday for the Christmas holiday. Coming up next, Bill Lindsay. He's a former NHL forward, now the Panthers color commentator. What does he think it's like to watch Matthew Tkachuk compete on a night-in, night-out basis? We'll get into that and so much more, especially ahead of this Blues versus Panthers matchup here on 101 ESPN.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they visit the Florida Panthers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale, and then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 6. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You're listening to BK and Ferrario here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Blues versus the Panthers tonight down in Florida. Alex will have your pregame coverage for that one starting tonight at 5 o'clock. But right now, we're covering that game with Bill Lindsay, former NHL forward, now a color commentator for the Florida Panthers, also an analyst over on the NHL Network, so covers the league at large. Bill, we appreciate the time, man. How you doing today?
Good afternoon. Everything's going pretty well. How's everything there?
It's been better, Bill. Coach got fired.
It's still nice outside weather-wise.
Teams getting called out for their lack of compete. It could be going better, not going to lie.
Yeah, there's been some ups and downs. It's kind of been a roller coaster watching the Blues this year. Went through it last year with the Panthers. We had a tough time getting out of the gate before we figured stuff out last year. It takes time, but you're in the right on that Western Conference side. Being 500 at this point is not a bad thing. Maybe that's why Craig Berube and the coaching change was made early on, trying to push this team. It's wide open. It looks like maybe the number 91, 92 points might get you in the playoffs in the West this year.
So, Bill, you mentioned the roller coaster that Florida went through last year, and obviously that was a start that a lot of people didn't anticipate because the Panthers just looked like a juggernaut on paper. I don't know if you could say the same thing about the Blues, but as somebody who has watched a lot of hockey, played a lot of hockey, is there a point when you're in the middle of a roller coaster season that you say, you know what, this year just might not be our year?
You can figure it out when you start to go head-to-head with some of the top teams in the West and kind of see where you stack up. But if I'm looking at the West this year, and I look at the Central Division, Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado, that's stacked. I believe that's going to finish 1, 2, 3 in Vancouver, LA, and Vegas, and all these teams. There's 6 legit teams in the top 3 spots on each side that I believe are going to firmly come out, and then it's kind of up for grabs after that. So I wouldn't throw it out yet. If I was St. Louis, it's too early in the year. If some of your young, I know Jordan Kyrou went through some stuff there with the coaching change and some of the comments, but he has all the skill in the world and ton of the talent. If Drew Bannister can drag that talent out of him and get some of these guys, Buchnevich, going Thomas, they're all on the same line together, and some of the veterans, there's enough veteran leadership in that lineup that if they're better defensively with the structure, there's enough offense there that St. Louis can at least compete for a playoff spot, in my personal opinion.
We're hoping that ends up being the case, Bill. Our question, though, and it is something that the coaching staff has talked a lot about. Yesterday, they were doing compete drills at the very beginning of practice to try to get this out of them. There's a compete issue here in St. Louis, and it's consistently taken place. And anytime they get down, it seems like they end up losing the game. They've only had one comeback win so far this season. Bill, you've been around this game for a long time. When you see something like that with a team that just struggles to get going at the start of some of these games, is there a way to fix that, or is that just something that either a team has or doesn't have?
No, you have the ability to fix that. You just have to get a team that's kind of, you got to get them to grab onto something early, and as a coach, maybe recognize some players. There can be times early in games where you shorten your bench, where you see some players going, and just kind of mix and match your lines and say, I've got some players going. I'm going to give them some extra ice time here, try and get them involved in the game, notice that they have some jump, and kind of sort it out that way through a game. But there should be no question that when I look down the lineup, sometimes as a young team, if you have a lot of young, inexperienced guys, then maybe starting on time could be an issue. But I look through this lineup, and when I see Parayko, I see Crude, Falk, Shen, Sod, Kevin Hayes. When I see these type of players, there's a group not beyond the coach. There's enough leadership in that room that you should be able to start on time. And that's where I would go to first is when I look at a team, do they have leadership in the dressing room that can fix this problem and get these guys ready and get these guys off the hop, jumping beside the coach? And when I look at the St. Louis lineup, there's some young talent, but there's enough veterans that should be able to pull these guys along.
You know, Bill, you mentioned the word leadership, and we use it all the time when we're talking about the Blues, when we're talking about whatever team that we're discussing. You played for a lot of played with a lot of outstanding leaders. I mean, you played with Scott Mellanby, you played with Patrick Marleau, you played with Saku Koivu in Montreal. What does that leadership look like that you're talking about?
Yeah, Joe Sakic in Quebec. It can be in different kind of ways. Joe Sakic was a quiet leader, but when he stepped on that ice, it was full-blown competitiveness. Brian Skrudlin was my first captain here in Florida. It never stopped, whether it was practice. Before a game, it was always chatter. It was go. And when he worked, he had to have two jerseys. He would change in between periods because he sweated so much. He was... And Scott Mellanby, when we transferred to the captain, to Scott Mellanby, it was more of that quiet leadership, but he didn't speak. But when he spoke, it was like the old E.F. Hutton. This is going way back. But when he spoke, people listened. He just grabbed your attention immediately. There's different ways to kind of go about it. Some people are loud. Some people are energetic. Some people don't speak a lot, but when they speak, you listen. But what is always behind it is that leadership, is that there is a commitment to the work ethic on and off the ice that never, ever wavers. And that's what you're looking from a leadership group, whether it's practice, whether it's a game, the start. It is always the same type of preparation. And that's what those players that you're talking about, that's what I learned and helped me to become a pro. They learned, and I taught, because I was so afraid to let those guys down. It wasn't about myself. I was more afraid to let them down than I was myself down. And when you get that throughout a dressing room, when everyone's working hard and you're afraid to let the guy down beside you, not yourself, that's when you become a team. And that's when average teams become good and when good teams become great.
Bill Lindsay is a former NHL forward, now the Panthers color commentator. You can also see him as he appears on NHL Network. He's joining us here on BK and Ferrario. Bill, I did want to ask you, the Blues just went through the coaching change. You experienced something in 97 where the Florida Panthers changed in season with their coach as well. You guys were coming off of a really solid season the year prior where you went to the postseason. As a player, what is that experience like when you do have that in-season coaching change?
Personally, it stinks as a player. It can change. It depends. Your role is going to change. But if you don't feel some responsibility for a person that just lost his job, then you're in the wrong business. No matter if you are playing 6 minutes a night and felt you deserved to be playing 14, maybe you felt, okay, the coach is going to change and come in here and I'm going to get more ice time, but that's the wrong way to think about it. Someone just lost their job and the old saying, you can't trade 20 players. But the next person, you better now be on alert, because once they make that coaching change, what they try and sort out next is who wants to be in whatever uniform. Do you want to be a Florida Panther? Do you want to be a St. Louis Blues? Because if not, we made the coaching change. We're going to find out and identify who wants to be here, and then we're going to start to sort that out next. And so that's where it became scary for me. One, we just let a person lose his job because of the way that we played, and I took that to heart. It was a sickening feeling. It really is. And now you become next on the hit list, and I didn't want that to happen. So if you're a player and you don't feel that responsibility, then shame on you.
Bill, on the flip side of this, the Blues' opponent tonight, Matthew Tkachuk and the Florida Panthers, always, as you mentioned earlier, on paper, a dangerous-looking team. What can Blues fans expect in this one tonight?
You're going to go against a really stingy defensive team. they play well in their own end. When they've lost, they went on a recent road trip. They've had trouble scoring goals at times. But this is a team that will get down, and they're not flash and dash. That identity that they were trying to find last year that they found in the second half in the Stanley Cup Finals, they chip it in, they grind it out, they're going to hold on to the puck, and they're going to make you work for every inch of that ice. They control the neutral zone well. I know St. Louis is one of the best rush teams in the NHL. They do have a lot of success off the rush and creating odd man rushes. That will be a challenge for the Blues tonight. They're going to have to be able to get through that neutral zone with some speed. The Panthers can take that away. It's Paul Maurice talking to them at the start of the year, the coach, that they were light years ahead of where they were at defensively last year, and that's what allowed them to get off to the good start without Montour and Ekblad in the lineup. So you're going to go up against a really hard-working, stingy team that's not going to give you a lot. At times, you can find them struggling to score goals. That's maybe where you can have an advantage. But they're gonna test you pretty much every way that you can think of.
Good. That hasn't been an issue at all for the Blues so far this year. Hey, Bill, we'll get you out of here on this. Anytime we have the opportunity to talk Matthew Tkachuk, we do it here in St. Louis. That's our guy, and he certainly had a successful season for the Panthers last year. It's been a rough start in terms of the goal scoring for him so far this year. The shooting percentage is way down, only 5 goals in the first 31 games. What are you seeing from his game so far this season?
It's the same. I talked about those leadership qualities. The puck's not going in. He has 110 or 115 shots, only 5 goals. His next 110 or 115 shots, there's going to be 20 goals in there. Yeah. So that shooting percentage is going to change because he gets the looks that you want from the slot. The last 3-4 games have been better. The bet opportunities have been there, but it just doesn't waver. There's too much talent around this lineup, and Tkachuk in the center force and all that stuff, greatness that he had last year, it's still there. It's been kind of snake bitten, but if you watch him play, for the most part, you just get the same Matthew Tkachuk. He's in your face. He's I guess the great thing that you can say about Tkachuk is that he's got a fourth line mentality with first line skill. So when he's not scoring, he's still having impacts on games. You would like him to score more, be more productive, but he said it the other day, I'm not scoring as much, but the team, we're in a better spot than we were last year. We're winning games. So it's only going to help the cause, I believe, in the second half of the year, these next 10 games or so before we get to the second half. Tkachuk will have a better second half, and this can, at least we're in a playoff spot. We're not chasing it this year, and if Tkachuk starts to piece it together well, then the goal scoring is going to go up, and this team's going to win even more games in the second half.
Bill, one more guy that I am curious about, just because his name has been brought up to me a couple of times, a pending free agent for the Panthers, Sam Reinhart. What have you seen from his game over these last couple of years?
Yeah, he had 16 goals on the power play the last couple of years, 8 more already this year. He's a force on the power play. What's underrated about him is his defensive skill. People don't talk about it a lot. He rated out last year as our best defensive forward up front with whatever analytics they use. They could be different with something, but he kills penalties. And you talk about a line with high hockey IQ, Barkov, Reinhart, and Rodriguez. Good luck. He didn't score early last year. He had the chances. It was like the flip side of Tkachuk. He had those chances last year, didn't go in. He's getting the chances this year. They are finding the way to the back of the net. He has an innate ability, natural ability to score goals, but it's a 200-foot game, and that's what is really impressive about some of these teams and these players is that it's very well-rounded group with Tkachuk and Barkov and Reinhart. It's not only that these guys have the ability to put up these kind of numbers, they don't sacrifice defense for offense, and that's maybe the best compliment you could give Reinhart, but the chances are going in for him.
Bill, we appreciate the time, man. Everything you're describing about your forwards is what we're hoping the Blues forwards will eventually become. Looking forward to the game tonight. Blues at the Panthers. Puck drop coming up at 6 o'clock. Enjoy it tonight. Have a happy holiday season. We'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
All right. Happy holidays. All the best. Thanks for
Bill.
having me on.
That's Bill Lindsay, former NHL forward, now Panthers color commentator. He'll be calling the game on the other side of things tonight for the Florida Panthers. Alex, when he describes Sam Reinhart and he describes Matthew Tkachuk having a fourth line mentality on the top line goal scorer player, I just... Man, can we get one of them?
Well, this one's a free agent. This one's a free agent next year.
What do you think, 10 mil? 10 million? 9 million?
10 mil's tough unless you're putting up 40 goals a season.
I mean, he's putting up 30 plus.
I would say you're probably going to see he's making 6.5 now, somewhere between 8 and 8.5, a 7 or 8 year deal.
Here's the question that I would have for you, Alex. Is he a better player than Pavel Buchnevich?
I don't know, because I haven't seen him play on a nightly basis. Like, I know that Pavel Buchnevich is a 200-foot player, but I mean, like, if you just look at Sam Reinhart's numbers over these last couple of years, and look, some of this is swayed because he does play with one of the best defensive centermen in the game, in Barkov, but like, he's got 39 points this season, and he's a plus 14. Yeah. You know, 2 years ago, he had 82 points and was a plus 25. I would say, in terms of what you need right now, yeah, he's probably a better player because...
To be fair, Pavel Buchnevich last year was a plus 14 on a terrible hockey team, and the year before that was a plus 29 on a very good one. So
absolutely.
Like, Buchnevich has all of the qualities you're talking about.
You know what? I love both of them, to be honest with you. I know you can't make that work, but I think you're going off of age there more than anything.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Blues at Panthers tonight. Pregame with Alex starting at 5 o'clock. The Junk Drawer coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, coming up here in just a little bit. If the team is out of the playoff race, does it alter at all the plans for the Blues moving forward? We'll get into that here in just a minute. But right now, it is time for the Junk Drawer. Alex, what do you got for us today?
All right, guys, it's the holiday season. No, I'm not going to start singing T-Bone's favorite Christmas song, but we know
It's a
that...
holly jolly
No, man, I was in the holiday season, so whoop-dee-doo. Never mind. Anyway, T-Bone's going to be doing a lot of couch sitting over these next couple of days because he's off next week.
For the next 7 days.
Well, I've got the top 10 binge-worthy television shows, if you'd like to try and guess them.
Ooh.
Like all
Are
time?
we talking like recent? What's the criteria here?
All time, according to Ranker. 1.5 million votes. The Office is on here. It is number 4.
I would think Friends is on there.
Friends is on here. It is number 6. Man, you guys are on a roll.
What's another
binge-worthy TV shows?
Seinfeld? Oh, Game of Thrones has
Game of Thrones is number 1. Congrats to you, sir. Family Feud, you would have got all the points.
Okay.
Seinfeld?
So you got 1, 4, and 5. No, Seinfeld is not on this top 30 list.
That's a mistake.
I would say Breaking Bad is probably on here.
Breaking Bad is number 3 on this
Really?
list.
I didn't know if that would get into the top binge-worthy. Okay.
I'm actually surprised Seinfeld's not on here.
Yeah, same.
What else do we have on here? Arrested. No, not big enough. Not
You
big
guys
enough.
love this one, Sopranos.
Sopranos, number 7, baby.
Oh, that's low.
That is low. Lower than I would have anticipated. Arrested Development's not on here, by the way.
I've never even heard of that one.
That's a good one.
Parks and Rec?
Parks and Rec is, but it's not top 10. It's 15th.
Oh, okay.
So right now you need 2, 5, 8, 9, and 10. I'll give you number 5 because I don't think you guys are going to get it. Sherlock.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that.
I wouldn't have got that one. I've never seen Sherlock.
It's good.
Is it? I bet you know what? What's it called? Not NCIS, not CSI. Law and Order.
No.
Law and Order is not on there?
Law and
Isn't there
Order
like
is
a
not.
million
I was gonna say, I don't
seasons?
know
Can
if that would be
you binge watch
considered
that?
binge-worthy. Isn't that like...
for sure it is.
Is it?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
dude. My wife loves...
Stranger Things, is that on there?
Stranger
Oh,
Things,
yeah.
that's number 2. That's a good one,
Oh,
T-Bone.
wow. I'm shocked that was
Yeah.
that high.
I mean, it seems like that's the trend is to binge Stranger Things.
Sure,
My
yeah.
wife keeps trying to get me to do it, and I've never done it.
What are you missing?
So we're missing 8, 9, and 10. You guys got 1 through 7.
10.
Can you give us a platform?
So 1 is kind of like The Office. It's just more recent. It's a sitcom.
More recent sitcom than The Office.
Yeah.
What Modern Family?
Nope, not Modern Family.
Big Bang Theory?
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, okay, I knew it would be a say.
So number 9 on this list is Supernatural. It's a show it was on
okay.
CW.
Yeah.
I really love that one. That's a good binge one. And
I
then the
thought about
last
starting
one,
that.
it's really good. And the last one is it's a series about motorcycles.
Oh, what's that called?
Sons of Anarchy?
Sons of Anarchy. Yep. So the others on this list: House, Ozark, Criminal Minds, but that's not CSI like you were. Law and Order, Prison Break, Band of Brothers, Dexter, Peaky Blinders, How I Met Your
Dexter's a
Mother.
good one.
Modern Family was number 22 on this list. Grey's Anatomy, The Mandalorian, Walking Dead, American Horror Story, and The Wire. It's a little pissed
The
off.
Wire. Put that higher up. That's embarrassing.
A little pissed off. Blacklist isn't on this either. Like I'm making my way through it, and it's freaking incredible.
Yeah, that's an okay list. Stranger Things is way too high. I would go Game of Thrones. I totally understand why that's up there. But Breaking Bad should be number 2. Sopranos should be way up there. Office at number 4, totally reasonable.
Office, I think, should be probably top 3 for how many times people have
The Wire
binged
would
it.
be way up there for me. Wire would be like, in my opinion, necessary viewing
I'm
for
glad
everybody.
Supernatural is one of those like low key flies under the radar people don't talk enough about. I've probably binged that thing 4 times. It's pretty entertaining.
I was say I've heard that one's really good. Like you said,
one's good.
Friday Night Lights should be on this list.
Never seen it.
Really?
I don't know. I've never even heard of it.
Yeah.
Good show.
We're starting Sopranos again because my wife has not seen it, so we're starting that over. Love me some Sopranos. I think I've watched that like 5
I've
times.
given up on it. I'm out.
Every time I watch The Sopranos, I learn new ways to use the F word.
You watch The Americans, right?
Yeah, that's good.
That's a good one.
To be fair though, like I'm like halfway through season 5. I've kind of like just kind of faded out of it. Maybe that's part of the problem. Is at some point you can lose people on it.
But that's when you know a series isn't good. If you get lost at some point where you're like, nah, this isn't worth it anymore, it's not good enough.
Now you just said
Schitt's Creek is another one that should have been on that list.
I'm shocked
but
Lost
see, you
wasn't
know
on there.
But see, like Lost, I feel like it had so many cliffhangers. Once you see it, you're like, man, okay, that's
maybe.
probably why Blacklist. I don't know if Schitt's Creek was binge-worthy. Like,
Oh, I totally disagree. It's the
watched
same
it-
thing as The Office.
yeah, but I watched it once, and I'm like, man, okay, it was funny, but Like, The Office just had so many memorable scenes that you had to rewatch it again.
Oh, I think Schitt's Creek is the
Did
same
it?
way.
Maybe I have to give it another chance.
Given it a rewatch as well.
Yeah, maybe I got to give it another chance. I mean, I love me some Eugene Levy, so.
I'm stunned Seinfeld didn't make this list. Even like, if
That
it
one's
wasn't,
pretty surprising
if it wasn't
to me,
top 10, okay, I
Especially
could
that
hear the
How I Met
argument.
Your Mother was on there. Now, I
Yeah.
love How I Met Your Mother, but Seinfeld deserves to be on there if that's on there. King of
Friends,
Queens.
same thing.
King of Queens should be on there also. That's another really good one to
I
binge.
really watched it.
Yeah, that one.
Wasn't
Okay.
for me.
I like it, but I don't know if it's like, I don't know if I'd binge
Fine by
it.
me.
I was like, all right.
Okay, cool. Hey, bleep me, right, guys?
You know what we're watching right now is Abbott Elementary on HBO. Pretty good. I've enjoyed it. It's been an enjoyable show. It's one of those two that you
is
can
that
kind
like
of...
the detective one or
No,
whatever?
very much not. It's an elementary school where they're the teachers in Philadelphia.
Isn't there another one called Elementary, though?
I don't know. Oh, Elementary is a show.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was going to say, that's a detective one. That's the one I was thinking of.
Abbott Elementary is really
Abbott
good.
Elementary?
It's only 2
Okay.
seasons so far. It's 20 minutes, so I like being able to fly through the episodes. Sometimes it's such a, like, man, I've got to invest a lot of time to get through 12 one-hour episodes, but Succession is another one. More recent.
Succession is
I
a
don't
good
know how
one.
long that
T-Bone,
one
do
was on,
yourself
but-
a favor.
I don't know if I'd binge that. Like, I've seen it, and I don't know if I'd go back and watch it.
Do
again.
yourself a favor and binge Sopranos over the
No,
holidays.
No.
Nothing says Merry Christmas like a big F you from Tony Soprano.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, if the Blues end up out of the playoff race, by the deadline, does it alter what they decide to do? At least one report seems to indicate that will exactly be what happens. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, this comes from the 32 Thoughts column by Elliot Friedman, one of the best NHL reporters in all of North America. Quote, the St. Louis Blues ran up the phone bills. Hopefully, Missouri has unlimited texting because the Blues tried to do something to shake up their group before making their coaching change. Alex, that is certainly quite the report, and it sticks with what we had heard from Elliot Friedman previously, that, hey, the Blues thought about, kind of sniffing around the trade market. This suggests that there was something significant that could have taken place with them before they made the move with their coaching change. They decided, you know what? Let's go and make the change with the coach, then we'll see how the roster reacts. I get it. I actually think that's the right way to go about it. Don't do something drastic before you eliminate another variable that could be the problem. Again, none of us think Berube was the issue here, but you got to find out first, and then we can eliminate some of the players that could be the problem. Alex, what'd you make of this report?
That the Blues were trying to pursue a hockey trade prior to Craig Berube getting moved. One of, and we don't know who it was, one of the players in that room that falls into the category of the compete, the accountability, what Braden Shen talked about, what Binnington talked about. The Blues were trying to find a way to move and bring somebody else in that would have given a different message to that locker room. Couldn't find it, whatever it might be. Teams didn't want to take on salary cap. Teams didn't like the player the Blues were offering. And Doug Armstrong basically said, well, we've got to make this move so that we can do something. Don't agree with it, but if you can't make a move, there's nothing else you can do. But this does tell me, if Elliot Friedman's correct, it goes right on to what Darren Dreger reported with us. This will not be the same team by the end of the season. And if this team continues down this spiral of bottom teams in the Western Conference, I mean, just as much as they're towards a playoff spot, they're also like 5 points away from being one of the bottom 5 teams in the Western Conference. So, like, it's very close, both sides. They will make significant moves, and I don't know if teams will be willing to take it on. I think there are certain players on this roster that fans might not be happy about them trading, but they might have to trade. But there will be changes if this continues because Doug Armstrong is already starting the conversations.
And to your point on where the Blues stand right now, if the draft was today, they would pick 11th, which is basically where they were a year ago. So it's not as if they're like an upper echelon team.
You're in the draft lottery.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said. I think this was them looking for a hockey trade. And I wouldn't be shocked if they end up trying to pull off bigger moves past this because we talked about it at the time when Berube was fired. This was the last element. And you just heard our previous guest, Bill Lindsay, say, like, hey, once the coach is fired, all the attention goes on to the players.
Yep.
So now Army is really looking and dissecting this roster and saying, okay, who really wants to be here and who doesn't? Because if they don't want to be here, I'm going to look to move them no matter when it is. At the deadline, in the offseason, I'm going to explore that. I think they were looking at a hockey trade. Now, who that is right now, I don't really know. But I do think that that's what they were looking towards.
So when they decide to go that route, and I say win because I think that's likely the way that this season's going to go, but let's go down this path together, even if people disagree with that. What are they looking to acquire? Because there was a report the other day that the Canucks, they made Andrei Kuzmenko a healthy scratch against the Predators. Things have not gone well for him this year in Vancouver. Last year, he scored 39 goals for them in his first season over in the NHL. He was a 26-year-old rookie. This season, he's at 6 goals through the first 29 games. This guy is a goal scorer. That is his value. He brings that to the table. And there's not a ton else that he's bringing to the table. He finished last season with 13 hits on the year, to put in perspective how not a whole lot of physicality that's coming from him. Let's put it that way. Alex, the reason I bring this up is because I think we've seen now with the Jordan Kyrou experience, the Jakub Vrana experience, the Mike Hoffman experience, maybe these kinds of players aren't exactly what fit in with the Craig Berube system. Are we out entirely on the goal-scoring first type of winger? Like, should we just cross off all of those names that we come across on the trade bait lists, or is that somebody that we could still see the Blues maybe trying to kick the tires on?
I mean, if you're asking me, I would say you're done with bringing these guys in. I mean, you've gone... Vladimir Tarasenko trended the wrong direction towards the end of his career. You tried it with Hoffman and it failed. You just tried it with Jakub Vrana and it failed, and you're still trying to figure out with Jordan Kyrou. I would say, yeah. I think you need other guys. I think you need guys that have, as Bill Lindsay said, fourth-line mentality that are first-line players. That's what you need more of right now on this roster. T-Bone brought it up last week. If Doug Armstrong and Craig Berube could just recreate 18 different Jake Neighbors, probably would. I don't think the Blues are out on it yet. nor should they be. If you got a 40-goal scorer who is just an offensive weapon, you consider it because you need offense right now. But here's the thing. It depends on who that player is. Like if we're talking Patrick Laine, we've gone through 2 different coaches where this guy got healthy scratched because he wasn't competing. If we're talking more of like a Phil Kessel, like Phil Kessel has figured it out. But is he the type of guy that helps you win hockey games?
Also, he's at the end of his career now.
Yeah.
That's not somebody that's going to grow with.
You said earlier, you're concerned about the mentality that Craig Berube brought up of winning a Stanley Cup with this roster. I'm not sure it benefits this team to bring in another guy that's so eerily similar to the guys you have in this roster already if you want to take that step forward.
Yeah, I think I would be out on it right now, at least until you can figure out where you're at with the roster in terms of the compete level. Because a lot of those guys that you mentioned, those goal-scoring minded first guys, they're the guys that are more prone to having the compete issues for the consistent basis. I'm not saying they don't compete, because they do, but they're the kind of guy that is like the Vrana, where it's up and down. When things are going right, the players love to play for him, and he's out there scoring goals. But when things go wrong, he's a liability on the ice. They don't really like him on their line, and he's not putting up points, and he's becoming a negative for the team. So I think right now, while you're trying to sort out a compete crisis, I would characterize it as, I don't think you need those kind of guys on this roster right now.
I would do it for Kuzmenko. 1-year deal. He's got this year and next. He's a modified no-trade clause, so it remains to be seen if he would even accept a deal here or if the Vancouver Canucks are even going to trade him. But if you could do something like Brandon Saad plus a second-round pick to bring him in and find out if it works, I think it's something I would consider. Vancouver is trying to compete this year. That is a really good team, and if they're not going to be able to get the best out of him, they need to find somebody who can produce for them right now because they're trying to go for it. They're in push mode. Meanwhile, the Blues are in wait-and-see mode. And this is a guy that last season had 39 goals for Vancouver. He had a 27% shooting percentage, so we should expect that to decrease. We should not expect him to be a consistent 30 to 40 goal scorer. But can it be 25 to 30 on a consistent basis? Can you get a little bit more of the compete out of him? That's possible. He's 27 years old. He's got 1 more year at $5.5 million. That is essentially replacing the salary spot that this year you had for Jakub Vrana and Kasperi Kapanen. That I would consider. So that is an individual player. I understand that. But that's the kind of bet that I would be willing to make. I don't want to do it on a long-term contract. Yeah. I'm not bringing somebody else in here that has 5 years remaining on their deal, and we have no idea if they're going to be able to fit in or not. If the price is not crazy high and I'm able to do it on a tryout period, that's the kind of thing that I would do for these guys. But a goal-scoring first mentality on a long-term deal, that is the kind of thing I don't think you can do.
Yeah, I mean, long-term deal, there's no way. I mean, Kuzmenko, sure, because you hope that, 1, you're going into a free agent year, and 2, you hope that being traded away from a team that's contending for a Stanley Cup maybe opens the eyes a little bit that you got to bring compete because everybody can change. If Alex Ovechkin can go from being a goal scorer to a 200-foot player, anybody can do it. So I would do it. My concern with Kuzmenko would be Rick Tocchet, who wants his players to compete, just like Craig Berube does, says this guy doesn't compete, played him on your 4th line, and then sat him for back-to-back games. So if that coach can't get it out of him, much like if a Craig Berube can't get it out of him, I'm not sure how many guys can. So 1 year for $5.5, if I'm offloading a contract that's got a couple of years, absolutely, because that puts you in a better position salary cap-wise. But I also know that like these types of players have not worked well for the Blues.
I totally get it. And somebody on the text line talked about getting Brandon Saad to a contender as well. I don't know. Like, this is just pure speculation by me. I feel like Brandon Saad is the exact type of player that you probably deal at the deadline. And the reason why is because I think he can really help a contender. I think he's going to have value to somebody as a third-line winger on a contending team. I don't know that he has the same kind of value for a team like the Blues right now.
Well, and I mean, if I'm the Colorado Avalanche and I know what he provides my team and they're offering him, sure, absolutely. Problem's going to be, is a team going to be willing to not only take him on, but take him on for 2 more years? Because I don't think the no-trade clause is a problem for Brandon Saad if you're trading him to a contending team. But is the contending team willing to take on 4.5 this year and 4.5 for the next 2 years? That's the bigger question.
Blues could keep some of that too. They could retain a little bit of that salary. I know it's not something they typically do.
Yeah, but then you're retaining it for the remainder of his contract also.
But if you do a 25%, taking on an extra $1 million every year, you can do that.
As the cap goes up and you're in a 3-year
and in that spot, you're hoping that you're opening up a roster. Because here's the thing. The Blues know that both Snuggerud and Dvorsky are going to be a part of the team by the end of this season or next season. Like, you're going to give them a shot. Whether it's here or the AHL, they're going to compete for spots next season.
Exactly.
You got to figure out how to add more of a experience, not age, but more like playoff experience to a roster that has those young players.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. In about 10 minutes or so, we're going to be joined by Kiley McDaniel, MLB insider for ESPN.com. Want to get his thoughts on whether or not he would give a multi-year contract to Josh Hader if he was in charge of the Cardinals. We'll get into that with Kiley McDaniel in just a little bit. But next, it's T-Bone's favorite segment of the week. Let's play a game of Believe It or Not here on 101 ESPN. Time for,
here.
believe it or not, there have been 17 different cough drops that were consumed over the course of the last break. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Let's play a game of... You good over there?
That's basically what BK sounded like during the commercial break.
Oh, sorry, everybody. I'm playing hurt over here. I'll get better. Hopefully by next week we'll be A-okay. All right, let's start with this, guys. Earlier today, it was announced that Mizzou has extended both their offensive and defensive coordinators. They have a top 20 recruiting class nationally, and they're adding guys from the portal left and right. Believe it or not, Mizzou will be hosting a first-round college football playoff game this time next year.
Believe it. Plain and simple, believe in this one. This is the, if I don't win this season, I'm never going to win with the Missouri Tigers type of season for Eli Drinkwitz. You've just done everything you need to do. You've got your coaching staff back. You brought in all the talent. You're keeping a ton of talent. I'm believing this one. They'll be hosting that first round.
I'll not believe it, but I can see where they get into the playoff. I don't know if they'll be hosting or not, because you got to be running through the numbers in my head. What, top 5 through 8? I can see where they probably sneak into the playoff and are not hosting, but I think they got a shot to get there, but I'm not going to believe this.
You look to their future schedule? Their 2024
I know they're playing Boston College.
Sure are.
Going on a tough
In
road trip to
Massachusetts.
UMass.
Well, that's the UMass game.
In Massachusetts.
They're playing both UMass and Boston College. Boston College is here. UMass, they're going to that
Yeah, I know.
15,000
That's a
seat
lot.
stadium.
Poor scheduling. They should have just stayed there for 2 weeks.
Tell me win or loss on these.
Okay.
Murray State.
Win.
Loss. Buffalo.
Win.
Boston College.
Win.
Vandy.
Win.
At Texas A&M.
Win.
Say win.
At UMass.
Win.
Auburn.
Win.
At Alabama. Okay.
Loss.
Oklahoma.
Win.
Loss.
He hates it. Keep going.
At South Carolina.
Gamecocks. Win.
At Mississippi State.
Win.
Win.
Arkansas.
Win. They're going
One
11
loss,
and
baby.
1.
2.
One loss.
They're not losing Oklahoma.
You've got to believe this.
boomer
Mizzou is
sooner.
hosting. In fact, they may avoid the first round entirely and be a top 4 team nationally. Mizzou
damn.
will be hosting a college football playoff game
What if they beat
this time
Alabama?
next year. Hosting. Hell, they'll be the number 1 team in the land.
Oh, no, I meant in the regular season. They're 12-0. They beat Alabama this year.
Exactly. They're going to skip the first round of the playoff entirely. They will take T-Bone's lesson from Major League Baseball, which is to avoid the wild card round. I am all in on this team. They had something to prove next year. Next year, they've got even more to prove by getting to the CFP. Alex, what do you got for us?
Let's not make that the freaking hashtag.
Believe it or not, the Blues will be selecting in the top 5 this year of the draft.
Not. I don't think they're that bad.
Is it bad that I hope they're that bad?
No, I think it would be good for them long term if they are, but San Jose, Chicago, Anaheim, Ottawa, Columbus, and a lot of the same names that we heard last year, I think they're all really bad. Like, those are clearly, in my opinion, the 5 worst teams in the NHL.
But
You know what?
NHL draft lottery, you never know.
Fair?
That's what I was just about to say. I'll be optimistic.
And if there's
I'll hope
one team
them
that
ping pong balls bounce around in our favor.
And we all know that there's a conspiracy theory, which the NHL, and we just saw it last year with the Blackhawks. You know what team needs a first overall pick or a top
San
5
Jose
pick?
so desperately.
No, they're in a hard rebuild. Edmonton's already gotten it, plus they won't be picking there. The Blues will be, Gary Bettman will be like, you know what? The Pinballs need to bounce in the Blues direction this year. I'll go out on a limb and I'll tell Doug Armstrong again this year, like I did last year. They'll be selecting in the top 5, and then he won't come back on.
Because of your tinfoil not happening, Army will not be joining.
He's very angry at me still.
Believe it or not.
You almost sang it there.
I know. I kind of got into it for a little bit.
Not.
Believe it or not, we will see Yamamoto as a Philadelphia Philly.
Not
going to believe this either, but the comments that we saw earlier today from Ken Rosenthal sure are interesting. T-Bone, do you have those in front of you?
I do not. I know he said that the Philly.
Sorry, I assumed you had it in front of you. That's
but
on me.
I saw the quote originally, and that's when I put it in my head for this
I
segment.
think he's coming to St. Louis, guys.
So if you're curious, earlier today, Ken Rosenthal was on with Foul Territory, and he said, quote, I would have said no 2 weeks ago to the idea that Philadelphia could end up signing Yamamoto. He now thinks there's a real chance. By the way, for those curious.
Yeah, what did he say about the Cardinals?
When asked about if the Cardinals could be the team that ends up landing him, he said, quote, that would be a shock, end quote.
All right, but you're hiding the message here. You're burying the lead where he said, I can't disagree with another player's reports.
He did say that, but he does not see Yamamoto coming here to St. Louis, and I do not see him going to Philadelphia. I think the teams that we've talked about all along are the teams that will likely land him. It's kind of similar to Shohei. All along, we thought the Dodgers were probably the team to beat. Typically, the way this stuff works out, like Sonny Gray, we talked about him all along, the most likely candidate to sign here in St. Louis. I think the same thing's going to be true for Yamamoto. He's going to end up in New York or LA. I think it's going to be one of those two markets.
I'm not going to believe it either, but I hope he goes to Philadelphia because I'm tired of hearing about the Dodgers and how great they are with Ohtani. Man, Philly gets Yamamoto. They are the best team in the NL, and I don't even think it's close because they've got a 1-2-3 punch of Wheeler, Yamamoto, Nola, and then you get Suarez, who's an awesome, pretty good number 4 for them. And then you got that lineup with Schwarber, Trey Turner, who I think is going to have a big bounce back year with Bryce Harper. And then you look at the bullpen, they'll have to add a little bit to the pen, but hell, they may not need it because Nola, Wheeler, and Yamamoto are going to be eating 7 innings every game.
I hope they do it because if they do, they probably have to let Zach Wheeler walk. Ooh. And then he can be your ace next year.
No, Cardinals will pass. They passed on him because they didn't want to trade Harrison Bader.
And Fried. Max Fried and Zach Wheeler are going to be leading the Cardinals rotation in 2025.
You just told me yesterday from Brandon Kiley himself, I don't think the Cardinals would ever sign a starting pitcher to a 5+ year deal.
Yeah, things change.
Those guys are going to get that.
Or trade Harrison Bader for one.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, the Blues will trade at least one defenseman and multiple forwards by the deadline.
I'll believe this one. I think if they're out of a playoff spot, Scandella will be traded because the team will want that as a third pair defenseman. You'll probably see Kapanen and or Sundqvist be traded, mostly because I think Kapanen's played well this season. Sundqvist's pretty clear. And then I do believe that one of Pavel Buchnevich and Brandon Saad will be floated out there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I believe it because I think Scandella will be traded. I think Sundqvist is the guy that I pinpoint as a forward because any team would love him as a fourth-line center. And then I truly believe they're going to trade Buchnevich at the trade deadline. I've not seen anything that reports that, but he just doesn't fit in the timeline, I don't think, for the Blues.
I'll put Leddy's name into this as well because if a team loses a defenseman between now and the deadline and they need somebody who's got some veteran experience, look, people will bash on Nick Leddy this season. Nick Leddy shouldn't be playing in your top pair. Nick Leddy was playing on a team for a second or third pair. He's a very competent defenseman. And if a team needs that security for the next couple of years, I could see a team being willing to take on a couple more years of it.
Quickly, let's go around the room. Guys, this comes from the 314. Believe it or not, the Buffalo Bills will represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I'm going to go ahead and believe it.
What? Believe it.
Not.
The AFC's so bad, man.
Yeah.
I just don't trust any of these other teams, and the Bills have a really, really high ceiling, as we saw last week. So I'll go ahead and believe it. I put my money on it, so I'll believe it.
I could see them losing to the Chargers this week.
No.
That's how volatile they are.
If they lose to Easton Stick, I'll come on here and eat this piece of paper.
I think they could absolutely lose to anybody that ends up in the postseason, but I'm going to go ahead and believe this.
Yeah,
because they've got the highest ceiling.
I think they've got the better overall offense than the Baltimore Ravens.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, Kiley McDaniel, MLB insider for ESPN.com. What's he hearing on Yamamoto? Does he think the Cardinals will get in on that? And more realistically, does he think that the Cardinals could actually go out there and push themselves to acquire Josh Hader? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues back in action tonight as they visit the Florida Panthers. And we'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 6. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We're happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Kiley McDaniel, MLB insider for ESPN.com. You can give him a follow on Twitter at KileyMCD. Kiley, we appreciate the time as always, man. Are we going to see this hot stove start heating up again soon after the Yamamoto signing?
Yes. I can't tell you if that will be on this end of Christmas or even New Year's or the other end. I believe his window closes January 4th. And I think you probably got to leave a couple days for, make sure the medical goes through, have some time if the medical doesn't go through to get another deal. So it could be as late as like New Year's Day, January 2nd, but I would imagine it'll get done late in December. And I think, yes, specifically the market I think you'll be asking me about, which is the trade market for starting pitchers, Dylan Cease, Corbin Burns, those sorts of guys. I think that's on hold until Yamamoto lands because there's so many teams that have put out offers for $200 million plus. They got to find out what the answer is first.
Well, before we get there, we got to ask about the Cardinals' interest in Yamamoto, which is clearly very high, Kiley. Lars Nootbaar said yesterday that he is still trying to pursue him to get here into St. Louis, and he believes the Cardinals have a real shot here. So, Kiley, are the Cardinals going to give him $250 million or $300 million to pitch in St. Louis?
Come on, Kiley. Yes.
If they're willing to give him $300 million, they got a shot.
They're not. I'm going to exclusively report Kiley, that is not happening.
Kiley, what if they're willing to give him a $300 million contract over 15 years?
There you go.
I don't know if that's going to work. Are we deferring most of it?
Yeah. And
roughly
all of the posting fee.
$295 million.
Yeah, everything's deferred.
Yeah.
To the next ownership.
I would not be willing to take a deferred payment for this segment, so I'm not going to presume that he'll take that either.
Smart. That free segment is going to be tough to defer out, Kiley. All right, let's get to the real stuff that the Cardinals could actually pursue, which is that trade market that you mentioned. Do you think the Cardinals are or should be active in those trade discussions for, frontier starting pitching?
Yeah, I think they should be, and it also is, I think, helpful that the prices won't be as insane as maybe some fans are thinking, because we're talking about guys with, in Dylan Cease's case, you get 2 years of control. Corbin Burns' case, you get 1 year of control. These are guys that are not going to cost you like 3 top 100 prospects. It's not a break-the-bank Juan Soto kind of deal. It's, palatable. And I think from the last time we talked, it was before Sonny Gray, and I was saying there needs to be like an actual like guy that you feel okay handing the ball in the first game of the playoffs. And I think he's that guy. I don't necessarily feel great about who gets the ball in the second game of the playoffs because Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn very well could just be the innings eaters that like maybe don't even, pitch in the playoffs, those kinds of guys. So you better think, Michaelis or Steven Matz or maybe Tim Kentz or Libertor or one of those guys can fill that role. And if you go down and look on the farm at, there's a nice sort of tier coming in AA and AAA of guys that will pitch as starters in the big leagues. But none of them are really frontline guys. Tim Kentz is the only guy that could be it. I'm not sure he's quite at that level. I think he's more at the Sonny Gray level than he would be that, say, Corbin Burns kind of level. And when you look at the depth in the organization now, like I said, at AA and AAA, there's arguably too many good young hitters in the lineup for everyone to get ABs. If you look at like Burleson, Carlson, those guys could be like fronting a deal. And then you look at the depth of starting pitchers, like the guys that were picked up at the deadline. If you were to package together 3 or 4 of these young guys, you could get, a year of Corbin Burns, maybe even be in the mix to get 2 years of Dylan Cease. And that would essentially solve the problem here. We have a couple too many hitters, a couple too many guys in the AA, AAA depth area. Not too much in the sense of, like, you don't want them. But, like, there's too many guys in depth and quality and in one area when you don't have necessarily that game 1, game 2 starter you need. And those guys are now available for somewhat reasonable prices. And if your limitation is the payroll, then these guys you're trading for solve that problem. So I think there's a solution here. I don't know if that's what they're trying to do.
Sorry to interrupt there, Kiley. So one name, though, that popped up a couple of days ago from Ken Rosenthal was Framber Valdez with the Houston Astros. If that name is available, is he the first one that you drop everything and go after if you're the Cardinals?
It's a good question. I think he certainly seems the most their type out of all of these guys. And I get the impression that could be a proactive move from Houston to say that we still need to sign Bregman and Tucker. And so Valdez might be the guy that is sort of left over. He also comes to 2 years of control like Dylan Cease. I think he's a little bit more predictable and a little bit more the kind of guy that you can feel good about. So, yeah, if you want to throw Valdez 2 years of control for, call it 12 and 15 or 16 over the next 2 years, that's certainly a discount over what you have to give him on the open market, because I think he'd be a 5 for 100 plus would be like what he'd be on the open market at least. So you're getting a nice discount there, and I don't think that trade price would be crazy.
So it would be your opinion then, Kiley, that it's not 100% necessary to trade a Nolan Gorman or a Brendan Donovan to be able to acquire one of these guys that could start a game 1 or a game 2 for you.
That comes down to what the team wants, because some of these teams, I think we've seen examples in the past where they, like what San Diego did in the Soto trade, they wanted 5 like big league caliber, close to the big leagues guys of different sorts. And they were fine with getting 5 rather than getting the Jason Dominguez, like the big one. And so if a team is looking for that kind of haul, St. Louis matches up really well. Because you could throw in, like I was saying, with Burleson, Carlson, whoever the guys are of that sort of outfield first base mix that aren't going to definitely get a starting spot. You have those guys. I'm working on my prospect stuff, but one of the guys acquired at the deadline you may not be aware of, Thomas Segisi, is like sneaky maybe a top 100 candidate who's also starting the year probably in AAA. So there's another guy to throw on top of that pile that are not, on the top of where Tyler O'Neill was, where they're not quite going to have enough playing time. And then between Liberatore, Semper Burst, Kloffenstein, Drew Rom, Graceffo, McGreevy, Tink Hintz, TK Roby, Cooper Jerpy, all those guys will start in the big leagues, and they're all in AA or higher. So you don't necessarily need that many prospects up there. Eventually you'll run into not having spots for all of them. So if you were to sort of package those guys together, you can put a nice package together of 3 to 5 guys of varying quality. But if they demand a headliner of we need like a slam dunk obvious guy, I'm not sure there necessarily is that guy that would put you at the front of that race, but maybe no one's offering that guy.
So on the other side of the pitching, Kiley, we've talked about a lot the bullpen help that the Cardinals are looking for, and Mark Feinsand reports yesterday about Josh Hader and the Cardinals potentially having interest. Does he make sense for the Cardinals, and take into consideration the price it's going to cost?
Yeah, I think what we're kind of circling right now is there's a little more pitching that can be added to this team, and there's some pieces available for a trade, or maybe there's enough money to add to the payroll. And when you look at the bullpen, obviously with Helsley, you've got like an obvious option there at the end. And with Jojo Romero, maybe Zach Thompson, you've got some lefties that are good. If you add a shutdown lefty right there, and the 8th and 9th inning is just the black hole where no one's getting out of it, and then all of a sudden Gallegos can go into the 7th, and then all of a sudden you don't, a 5 and die from a pitcher gets out with 2 or 3 runs, that's actually okay because the 8th and 9th is over. That's another way of getting at this. If you can't find that starting solution, Hader could certainly be that option.
Do you prefer that, Kiley, or would you prefer the option of them going out and getting that pitcher in a best case sense?
I think if you're talking Valdez or Cease, I think that solves the problem that you could describe as an organizational problem for the last couple of years and maybe projecting into the next 2 years. So I think if you can find that guy you think is a frontline guy with any non-zero chance of extending them, then I think you take it. But if you're then getting into it's 1 year Corbin Burns and he won't extend, it's just 1 year of a guy, then I'm like, all right, let's talk about Hader, because the track record of those guys at the top of the release market over multiple years is pretty strong. And we've seen that those guys, they give you more in the playoffs than they give you in the regular season, whereas the sort of Gibson Lins of the world, they give you less in the playoffs than the regular season. And right now there needs to be some sort of leverage toward that 8th, 9th inning reliever that throws every game in a 7-game series, or that number 1 starter that can go games 1, 4, and 7. That's where the rest of these sort of assets that St. Louis has need to go into those sorts of players.
All right, Kiley, just a couple of questions left for you, kind of bigger picture sense here. Kiley McDaniel is our guest. You can find his work over at ESPN.com and give him a follow on Twitter as well, at KileyMCD. When you look at this Cardinals offense, Kiley, I think it has become a topic of discussion here in St. Louis that there are very differing opinions on. Some really like the offense. There are a lot of good names in there, but the production kind of waned towards the end of the season. Others think that it's a bit overrated. Where do you stand on your projections for this Cardinals offense in 2024?
I kind of anticipated this question because I keep glossing over there's like a couple too many guys here. You could probably stand to trade 1 or 2 of them after already trading one. And I pulled up the Fangraphs depth charts to see if I was crazy, because it felt like a top 10 group to me. and they currently have them at, I think, 8th right now. Well, obviously, there's like still some moves to be made. But I think they wouldn't fall much below that, even with the rest of the offseason, if they don't, if St. Louis doesn't add any offensive players, because of what I was saying. There's so many guys in part-time roles or in AA, AAA roles that could come up and fill in. The thing that St. Louis does really well is a lot of unheralded young players or, medium heralded young players are a notch better than you think they'd be. And making sure you're not giving at bats to like a total zero guy that should be on the field, that's how you avoid having that bad offensive season, because there's a couple sinkholes in there. They avoid that very effectively because of these sort of player development bent to things. And I think it's also interesting that the entire rotation is 32 and older, and almost the entire lineup is in the 20s, and especially when you include like the bench and all those guys, it's like a completely different. It would seem like two different teams made this pitching staff in this lineup, because they seem like they're, the approaches have been very different. But yeah, I'm not worried at all if there's a situation where like, by the end of the season, this guy got hurt, that guy had a slump, and they ended up 11th in run scored. Are they not a top 10 group? I'm like, they might not end up exactly where I'm saying they're going to go, but I'm not worried on paper at this point.
And final thing, we'll get you out of here on this. The NL Central, we've talked about this for years, that it's something that this division keeps everybody in contention because nobody really ever pulls away. I thought maybe this was going to be the offseason, especially after they went out and made a big move to get their new manager, that the Cubs would be big-time spenders. What are you anticipating the Cubs doing this offseason now that they have missed out on Shohei Ohtani, and it certainly doesn't sound like they're one of the leading contenders for Yamamoto either?
I get the impression they're in like a multi-year switching from being pretty good to being a real threat. So I would imagine if they don't do it this offseason and the 24 season, I imagine it will be the next winter, because they have a lot of guys like Pico Armstrong that are in that sort of AAA area that you're waiting for them to translate. And if they come up and don't do it, then maybe re-signing Cody Bellinger makes sense. But I think they're going to let PCA play, and luckily Bellinger can play multiple positions, and I'm not sure what his market is. And the same way Blake Snell, two Boris guys, not positive where they're going to land right now. I think the Cubs are waiting and seeing, and I kind of wonder if they're going to be the dangerous factor after Yamamoto and some of the bigger names and some of the bigger payroll teams have made their moves. Do the Cubs then sweep in and all of a sudden have $50 million to spend on the next tier of guys, or to make that big trade or two? I kind of wonder, like you are they about to do something, or are they like a year away from doing a big thing?
Interesting. Hey, Kiley, we appreciate the time as always, man. I know you've been a little under the weather this week, so get yourself feeling better. Have a very Merry Christmas, and hopefully we'll talk with you soon after this frost ends up defrosting off of the hot stove.
I'm going to have a lot of thoughts on the Blues to share with you guys, too.
Oh, my gosh, yes. Yes, Kiley.
Do you want to give one hot take real quick?
Get me fired up before we go into the end of our show.
I just don't know if the forecheck is strong enough.
There we go.
Amen to that, brother.
Kiley, appreciate the time as always, man.
Have a good one.
You got it. That's Kiley McDaniel here on 101 ESPN. Always appreciate his time here on the show. I think that if you can get out of one of these trades, Alex, that he was mentioning, and you don't have to give up Donovan or Gorman, you're just giving up your depth, like Carlson, Burleson, Sajaci, TK Roby, or even if it is Tink Hence, like I wouldn't want to give him up. But if you're telling me that I can get away with not giving up a major league stud, and instead I can give away stuff from the major leagues with prospects from the minors, and I'm getting like a Framber Valdez or a Dylan Cease in return, that's the move. That's what the number one priority should be the rest of the offseason, is to make one of those kinds of moves over a Josh Hader, over one of the other pitchers that are available on the market. That's the way to go.
It is, and it makes
possible.
And it makes sense that it hasn't happened yet, because like Kiley said, everybody's waiting for the Yamamoto sweepstakes. And frankly, the Cardinals are making a move now because they want to see if the price drops. Because if you're calling one of these teams about these starting pitchers, the price starts with Nolan Gorman. And then when you wait it out and these teams don't get the reaction that they expected for their starting pitchers, that's where the Cardinals swoop in. Like it or not, that's how John Mozeliak works. It's what worked with Nolan Arenado. It's what worked with Paul Goldschmidt. They've got a price, and if you're not going to pay it, well, then they'll move on. And that's why we're still in this waiting period.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. If you missed any of our conversation with Kiley McDaniel, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. Alex has a very special treat for you coming up next in the Rewind here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario for just another couple of minutes here on 101 ESPN. If you missed anything from the show, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app, and youtube.com/101ESPN. They're all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
There is still time for you to get your 101 ESPN merch by supporting Operation Food Search this December. Go to 101ESPN.com. You'll have the online merch store. Right now, it's got some of your favorite stuff with help from the STL shirt coats powered by McBride Homes. But Alex has a special treat for you today. T-Bone's out tomorrow, which means we got to get our Christmas puns in a day early. T-Bone, hit that music.
All right, fellas. How do you guys wash your hands over the holidays?
Tell me about it, Alex.
With Sanitizer.
That's good.
Why is Santa afraid of getting stuck in a chimney? Because he's got claustrophobia. What do you get when you combine a Christmas tree with an iPad? Well, that would be a pineapple.
It's time for the fast lane.
How did Scrooge win a football game?
Oh, tell me, Alex.
Well, a ghost of Christmas past.
Oh!
Two more. T-Bone. What are the best kind of Christmas sweaters made from?
Sweaters?
Yeah, Christmas sweaters made from. Fleece Navidad. Final one. What do you call the search engine that Christmas elves use?
Oh, this is going to be good.
Michael Google. Merry Christmas, ladies and gentlemen.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. T-Bone's out for the next week. We'll miss him. Wish you a Merry Christmas. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane is coming up next.